Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world scented with incense, fish sauce, and way too much ego. You are a Roman orgy planner. Yes, that's a real job. And no, it doesn't get less weird the more you think about it. The city is already murmuring around you, chariots clattering on stone, vendors shouting about olives, someone possibly being murdered 2 streets over. But you've got a party to plan. A big one. You probably won't survive this, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the city does. Rome is still yawning under its sandstone blankets. The air smells faintly of bread, sewage, and ambition. Your back aches from sleeping on a woven straw mat that's about as forgiving as a Roman tax collector. But there's no time to linger. You've got mere hours until tonight's orgy. And this isn't just any orgy, it's a patrician grade, society trembling, reputation minting kind of affair. You shuffle toward the basin, splash some cold water on your face, and try to forget the dreams about flamingo livers and unpaid caterers. Behind you, your apprentice is already awake, snoring audibly while holding a piece of parchment to his forehead like it might absorb knowledge osmotically. Today's checklist is longer than the Appian Way. You've got to wrangle 3 musicians, for food deliveries, 1 acrobat with a limp, and a philosopher who insists on opening the event with a speech about virtue, at an orgy. You make a mental note to accidentally misplace his invitation. As you light a smoky olive oil lamp, the room flares into flickering half-shadows. The ceiling is cracked, and the wall mural of Venus has faded into something that looks more like a startled chicken. Still, this is your workspace. Your arena. Your battlefield. You're not a senator. You're not a general. But you do have the power to make or break reputations, marriages, and possibly someone's next consular campaign, all by choosing the wrong seating chart. Your job starts in silence. You review the scrolls from last night, guest lists, dietary restrictions, blackmail threats. Tiberius wants to bring a companion. Marcia refuses to sit near any men under 30. And someone, bless them, insists on gluten-free barley cakes. In Latin, this is called Problematicus Maximus. Your assistant finally wakes up and bumps over a basket of rose petals. You sigh. It's going to be one of those days. Downstairs, the streets pulse with morning chaos. The bread line snakes around the corner, and a donkey refuses to move without emotional validation. Your sandals squeak as you walk toward the warehouse, your secret storage haven for all things party-related, scented oils, silver goblets, emergency grapes. You open the door and realize someone's stolen the good linen again. No matter. You have backups, slightly stained, but perfumed to mask the smell of regret. You start organizing. The fish sauce arrives in clay amphorae, sealed and stamped. You give one a shake. If it sounds like a drowned rat, it's fresh. That's the science. You assign your apprentice to count olives. He counts 8. You have 70 guests. Math isn't his strength. The musicians arrive, 2 lyre players and a flute guy who seems too excited. You give him a calming date stuffed with honey. The flute guy, not the lyre. As the morning sun heats the rooftops, you make your rounds, checking on the mosaic tile polishers, yelling at a boy trying to steal figs, and narrowly avoiding a senator's wife on her 3rd wine-soaked morning walk. Every interaction is political. Every olive pit a landmine. You return home for a moment's rest. But the gods are cruel. A scroll arrives. It's from the host. He's decided to double the guest list, add fire dancers, and insists that the essence of Bacchus must be felt. Which you think means more wine, but it might mean hiring a man to dress like a grape. Again, you set your jaw. You've survived worse. Remember last Saturnalia? With the goat? And the lawsuit, you change your tunic to something less flammable, swallow your anxiety like a mouthful of vinegar, and step out into the noise of Rome with a mission. You are a Roman orgy planner. And this is only the beginning. You head toward the logistics hub, the real heart of any Roman debauchery. No, not the Senate. The warehouse district. A place where perfumes from Alexandria mingle with the smell of old fish and tired donkeys. Where dreams of glory sit next to piles of folding tables, wine jugs, and vaguely illegal amphorae labeled not poison, probably. This is where you build the skeleton of tonight's delight. First stop, the spice dealer. He's a hunched man with a beard that may contain its own ecosystem. His booth is stacked high with jars, pouches, and at least one petrified rat he swears is just very old ginger. You need long pepper, ground silphium, or what they say is silphium, and a red powder from somewhere near Parthia that makes your nose feel like it's been uppercut by a spice merchant in a bad mood. While you haggle over coriander and saffron, you keep one eye on the mule who's chewing your sandal. Again, spices secured, you make your way to the animal handlers. They're busy trying to load 2 peacocks, 3 half-drunk geese, and 1 extremely uncooperative monkey onto a cart. The monkey is supposed to dance at the midpoint of the party. Instead, it's trying to undress the geese. Classic, you negotiate the hire of an exotic cat. Not too exotic, you warn. The last panther was a bit much. The handler assures you this one is mostly tame and only bit a senator once. On the foot. Probably in jest. As you're finalizing the rental fee, 2 denarii and a bottle of myrrh wine, your apprentice shows up, out of breath, holding a scroll like it's a burning torch. You know that look, disaster. The wine merchant says he can't deliver the Falernian, he says. Something about a shipment delay and an unexpected infestation of wine rats. You groan. Falernian is the wine. The Beyoncé of Roman vintages. It's what people brag about drinking when they want to impress guests, or forget their fathers. No Falernian. No party, you march straight to the wine district, a neighborhood that's half aromatic joy, half liver disease. There, you find Marius, the wine merchant, nursing a bruised ego and what appears to be an injured ankle. Bandits, he claims, gesturing dramatically with a half-eaten figure. They took the amphorae, the donkeys, and my dignity. You eye the amphora behind him. It's labeled Falernian. The seal is broken, yes. But that doesn't mean it's undrinkable. You sidestep a sleeping dog and tap the jar. The wine inside smells suspiciously like vinegar and regret, diluted, Marius says quickly. Add honey. No one will know. You consider. Roman guests are notoriously snobby, but also easily distracted. A few torchlit distractions, enough harp music, and perhaps the presence of a mildly intoxicated aristocrat willing to sing off-key could buy you the credibility you need. Fine, you sigh. But throw in the Alban wine, too. I need a decoy. You leave with 3 amphorae, 2 apologies, and a growing sense of dread. By now, the sun is fully up, the cobbled streets buzzing with complaints and pigeons. You dodge a child with a stolen fig and head to the fruit seller's stall, a woman with the demeanor of a disgraced empress and a scale that always weighs in her favor. You point to the ripest grapes, the softest figs, the least angry-looking pomegranates. She nods, spits once, and begins throwing fruit into a basket with the grace of a catapult operator. She includes a few unripe pears. You say nothing. Life is short, and arguing about pears in public is unbecoming of an orgy planner. At this point, your arms are full, your list is long, and your dignity is somewhere between the donkey stable and the garlic stall. But then you remember, the flower vendor. You make your way toward the forum's quieter edge, where flower carts form a chaotic rainbow of petals and pollen. You don't even sneeze anymore, you've built up a tolerance over years of proximity to excessive flower arrangements. The vendor, a lanky teenager with a romantic crush on your apprentice, a fact your apprentice is both proud of and afraid of, greets you with a dramatic flourish. Roses, lilies, hyacinths. And one carnation I swear looks like Mars if you tilt your head, he says. You take the roses, even though they wilt faster than your patience. You also choose lavender, strategically placed. It masks a multitude of sins, including the smell of nervous party guests and the exotic cat's litter box. The cart is now full. You whistle for a delivery slave, someone you pay to appear invisible yet be everywhere. He emerges from nowhere, like some sandal-wearing spirit of logistics, and starts organizing everything into neat bundles. You tip him with half a pomegranate and the promise of leftover pastries. He accepts solemnly, as if receiving a sacred gift. Now comes the hardest part, coordinating deliveries. Rome is beautiful, powerful, and impossibly chaotic. Even your best-laid routes can be upended by impromptu parades, a sudden goat rebellion, or a surprise execution in the main square. You draw a rough map in charcoal, marking drop zones, avoidance zones, and one tiny danger. Bees, symbol in the corner where the apiary cart always parks too close to the musicians. Once the route is set, you send your apprentice to manage half the items. This is a test. He's failed it before, but maybe today he'll surprise you. He heads off with a flower bundle under one arm and a bag of dates tied to his belt like a primitive fanny pack. You return to the party site, a sprawling domus owned by one of Rome's newest elite. He's rich in coin but poor in class, which makes planning for him both profitable and exhausting. He insists on Greek touches but can't pronounce Euripides without sounding like he's choking on an anchovy. The atrium is already bustling. Slaves scrub floors, carry amphorae, and argue about incense placement. One is lighting too much frankincense. You cough and wave it away. Another has set up the couches too close together. You separate them just enough to allow dramatic exits, should anyone be offended mid-orgy. You make your way to the triclinium, the dining hall where most of the debauchery happens. There are couches on three sides, leaving the center open for serving platters, dancers, and spontaneous existential breakdowns. You check the ventilation. It smells like marble, dust, and crushed ego. Perfect, the house steward finds you, eyes wild. The mosaic guy fell off his ladder. Again, he says. He says Neptune is punishing him. You sigh. Did Neptune also make him drunk? The steward shrugs. Maybe. You head to the mosaic floor. The artist is indeed lying on his side, muttering about sea gods and holding a tile shaped like a dolphin. You help him up and redirect him to the hallway, where it won't matter if the waves look more like pickled snakes. A brief glance at your list shows 12 tasks still unchecked. You tackle them one by one, like a gladiator of logistics. By mid-afternoon, the courtyard smells faintly of hope, sweat, and overripe melon. The couch arrangement is flawless. The cushions are stuffed, fluffed, and placed at just the right angle for someone to fake laughter without pulling a neck muscle. The harpist arrives early. He's blind, as advertised, and brings a seeing-eye slave who also sings. You consider replacing the philosopher with this duo. You order a test song. It's slow. Very slow. Possibly the tempo of erosion. Still, the harp sounds nice. You approve. Back in the kitchen, the chef is yelling about the oysters. They're too fresh, he says, which is apparently bad. I can't make them provocative if they don't smell slightly dangerous. You gently suggest he open them near the warm brazier. He lights 3 incense sticks and thanks Venus. Probably not for the oysters. Finally, the centerpiece, the ice sculpture. Yes, in Rome. Yes, in summer. You hired a Gallic artisan who swore he could transport essence of glacier in a wagon lined with goat fur and pessimism. It arrives half melted, half glorious. It looks vaguely like a reclining Venus, or a particularly glamorous puddle. You place it in the corner with a shallow dish to catch the drips. Art is fleeting, the last light of afternoon begins to golden the domus. You take it in for a moment, bowls of fruit glistening, oil lamps glowing, flowers arched like a theater set. The air buzzes with anticipation. The orgy may be absurd, over the top, and teetering on the edge of moral collapse, but it's your absurdity. Then the door bursts open, it's the host. He's early, and he's brought guests. Already, you paste on your most convincing smile and walk forward. Showtime. You're halfway through convincing a servant to fluff the cushions with a little more theatrical intent when the guest list scroll unrolls itself like a vengeful prophecy. Dozens of names, each more complicated, influential, and emotionally unstable than the last, cascade down the parchment in tight cursive lines that could double as coded threats. The Roman elite, you've come to learn, don't attend orgies. They weaponize them, every name is a diplomatic minefield. Every pairing is a potential duel disguised as a dinner. This is less about food and fun and more about who's seated next to whom, and who gets quietly left off the list entirely, and so begins the real labor of the day, strategic social engineering by candlelight. Olive oil lamp flickering like a nervous heartbeat. Let's start at the top. Lucius Attius Lamia, senator, Epicurean, father of 7 legitimate children and at least 9 rumored illegitimate ones. Charming. Loud. Allergic to anchovies and subtlety. Lamia can't sit next to Claudia Valeria Messalina, widow, poet, and suspected poisoner of her last husband, which she denies with suspicious specificity. Why? Because their last encounter involved Lamia laughing too hard at one of Claudia's haikus, followed by Claudia accidentally dropping a fig knife onto his foot. Then there's Marcus Caelius Rufus, who always arrives late and never in the same tunic twice. An orator by day and scandalous gossip by moonlight. He must be seated somewhere visible, but not center. If he's given too much attention, he tries to perform impromptu interpretive tragedies. If ignored, he retaliates by loudly comparing your wine selection to pond water. Meanwhile, you've got a message from Domitia Longina, who refuses to attend unless her ex-husband's mistress's cousin's neighbor is uninvited. That would be Quintus Flavius, who has no idea he's on Domitia's radar, let alone her blacklist. You pause for breath and glance at the seating chart you've sketched out on a wax tablet. It looks less like a dinner plan and more like a war campaign map. Arrows denote emotional vendettas. Circles show proximity to scandal zones. One corner just says do not put anyone here, floor squeaks, too many curses. A messenger arrives, sweaty and panting. Scroll from the Vestal Virgins, he says, handing over the folded parchment with all the reverence of a man delivering divine rejections. You open it. Formal apologies. They won't attend. Again. Something about vows and sacred fire and not that kind of party. One day, you'll convince them. One day, then comes the twist, a short, sharp knock at the gate. You're not expecting anyone. The last vendor left an hour ago. You open the gate to find a boy in a toga 2 sizes too big, holding a scroll sealed in wax and a clay tablet covered in grape stains. He looks like he's been running for hours, or is just naturally exhausted by life. You take the scroll. It's from Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, yes, that family. Not the emperor, thank the gods, but close enough to cause panic. He wishes to attend tonight's gathering with a modest party of 16. You blink. 16 what? People. Statues. Trained snakes. The wax seal bears his crest, a lion fighting an eagle over a plate of lentils. This changes everything. You must now redo the seating entirely. Move the Epicureans away from the astrologers. Separate the senators from the dancers. Keep the visiting Germanic noblewoman away from the Parthian merchant with the eye patch and loose morals. As you recalibrate, Petronius, your hired flatterer, arrives. He offers feedback no one asked for and information no one trusts. The mood among the upper domus is anxious, he says. They heard Lucan might come. Also, someone spread a rumor that the orgy is dry. You stare at him. Dry. Emotionally, he amends. Not in terms of wine. But still. You decide to invite Helvia, a respected dowager who brings three things: legitimacy, gossip, insurance, and an excellent cheese board. She'll anchor the older generation and remind everyone that even orgies require a touch of gravitas. Next, you insert twins, Titus and Tullia, professional partygoers known for showing up in matching silk and starting arguments about philosophy halfway through dessert. They're divisive, but dynamic. You place them just near the center, flanked by neutral guests who can absorb the chaos. The scrolls grow heavier in your hands. Each name has a history, a motive, a past party faux pas. You spend the next hour drafting what is essentially a drama-absorbing seeding algorithm. You diagram social connections like a temple scribe tracing the lineage of Jupiter. At one point, you catch yourself whispering if Claudius sits next to Marcia, and Marcia hates Octavia, then. Like a mad prophet deciphering dreams, the final chart resembles an abstract painting: arrows, color codes, emotion tags. You know more about these people's relationships than their own therapists. If Rome had spreadsheets, you'd be emperor by now. By sunset, you lean back, staring at your masterpiece. The ultimate arrangement: 13 couches, 99 guests, 0 duels, hopefully, and only 3 likely meltdowns. All that remains is convincing them they chose their own seats. You exhale slowly. Then your apprentice returns. He says, holding up a new scroll. Message from Lucius Junius Silanus. You take it. I'm bringing a +1, it reads. Hope you don't mind. He's my new boyfriend. Also my ex's brother. Drama guaranteed. You scream into a silk pillow. You begin to suspect that the gods have placed a curse upon this particular kitchen, not in the metaphorical sense. No, you're fairly certain there is literally a curse etched into the corner of one of the pantry doors. Something about all ye who dare bake honey cakes here shall weep unto Saturn. Seems excessive, but then again, this is the third time this month the olive oil amphora exploded without warning. As you step inside, the heat hits you like a drunken centurion trying to hug someone mid-sword fight. Smoke coils through the rafters. Somewhere in the back, someone is shouting about lentils being possessed. A small fire flickers in the corner, not the hearth, but an entirely unrelated and wholly unauthorized flame. You take a deep breath, cough immediately, and press forward. The kitchen is a war zone. Earthenware jars lie cracked open like wounded soldiers. Flour clouds the air like some kind of starchy battlefield fog. A chicken, uncooked, angry, and somehow wearing a parsley garland, leaps off the table and makes a break for it. It's hard to say who's in charge anymore. Then you spot him, Thrax, the head chef. Large, loud, and always glistening, whether from sweat or something more mysterious, no one knows. He's holding a cleaver like it's both a cooking implement and a diplomatic tool. His brow furrows as you approach, the kind of expression usually reserved for tax collectors or ghosts of previous mistakes. He growls, what is this? He gestures broadly toward a platter of what appears to be boiled turnips in a mustard honey glaze. They look like sadness sculpted into food. That's new. You try, that's heresy, Thrax replies. This is supposed to be a Roman banquet, not some soft-hearted Dacian baby feast. You sigh, this is the 4th time he's accused your menu of treason against Roman culinary tradition. The last time was over cinnamon-dusted dates. He still refers to that evening as the night of sugared shame. You try to soothe. You whisper, his cart squeaks. The ox meat is there. The boar is not. Problem at the forum, he says. Someone released it. Now it lives in a fountain. Locals are calling it the pork nymph. You order substitutions. Quail eggs. A lot of mushrooms. Emergency eels, and, because you're feeling lucky, you send a courier to chase the boar. If he tames it, you say, we serve it. If not, we still serve something. Final prep begins, dishes are stacked. Wine sauce is stirred. Tiny roasted things are dusted in even tinier herbs. Bread is sliced with the precision of a military siege. You slip outside briefly to breathe air that doesn't taste like cumin and regret. From the courtyard, you can hear laughter. Lanterns are lit. Guests are arriving. You glance up at the moon, half full and slightly smug. Let the feast begin. You always know the party's getting close when the torches start whispering to you, not literally, of course. You're not that sleep-deprived. Yet. But there's a certain pressure in the air, thick with resin smoke, sweet with crushed marjoram, and vibrating with the kind of energy that can only mean someone important is going to dramatically storm out before dessert. That's the thing about hosting a Roman orgy. It's not just meat and music and mood lighting, it's theater. Every vine-wrapped pillar is a stage prop. Every silk-draped archway is a subtle cue. Every fig placed just so on a bronze platter is saying, yes, I'm delicious, but I'm also a symbol of fecundity and diplomatic flirtation. Please admire me respectfully. Tonight, you're the director of a slow-moving, scandal-studded, olive oil-slicked opera, and the stage still looks like a storage room that lost a bet with Dionysus. You start with the candles, 300 of them, some already lit, flickering like tiny rumors. Others sit in bronze bowls, waiting to blaze with just the right level of dramatic insincerity. You arrange them to highlight shadows, bounce against frescoes, and make everyone's skin look slightly younger and marginally less treacherous. Roman lighting isn't just for ambience, it's damage control for wrinkles and gilt. Then came the chamber pots. You must hide them, not because they're disgusting. Though, yes, they are, but because nothing kills a sensual mood faster than eye contact with a terracotta bowl of questionable content. You deploy a squad of servants to whisk them away, replacing each one with tasteful piles of roses and slightly too perfumed myrtle branches. One guest once mistook a rose pile for a small dog. He still tells the story. You let him. Then comes the matter of music. You want a lyre. Nothing too formal. No trumpets, that's for funerals or declarations of war. No flutes, too squeaky, too Greek. You settle on one solo lyrist. Must be attractive. Must be talented. Must know how to look longingly at the senator's wife without trying to sleep with her. You place him at the far end of the second atrium. Visible from all angles. Close enough to hear. Far enough to ignore. Perfect. Now for the perfumed steam, a touch you stole from Cleopatra's visit to Rome. You've placed kettles of water beneath stone braziers. Toss in handfuls of crushed rosemary and powdered frankincense. As the steam rises, so does the illusion of mystique. Everything looks a little blurrier, a little dreamier, a little less likely to result in lawsuits. Your assistant approaches, cheeks flushed, toga crooked, holding a small wooden box. New delivery, they pant. From the Etruscan boys. Inside, 6 carved ivory peacocks. Do we need peacocks? You ask, your assistant shrugs. They're in right now. You scatter them across the side tables like very judgmental paperweights. Next, the statues. You've borrowed several for the evening. Aphrodite adjusting her sandal. Apollo tuning a lyre. A nymph suspiciously biting her lower lip. Art, technically, but also a message. This is what beauty looks like, they whisper. Are you measuring up? At least one senator will awkwardly compare his calves to the Apollo figure before dessert. You unroll the floor cushions with dramatic flair. Each one is embroidered, fluffed, and perfectly arranged for maximum lounging and minimum modesty. You've color-coded them by emotional intention, deep red for passion, sea green for intrigue, dusty lilac for accidentally overheard someone's inheritance plan. Everything is both intentional and plausibly deniable. The wine station is next. not just amphorae lined up in a row. This is no tavern. You have a sequence. A narrative. A journey. Mulled wine from the provinces. Honeyed Falernian for the socialites. One obscure vintage bottle during a lunar eclipse blessed by a whispering oracle. According to the label, you made that label yourself. And, carefully hidden, 3 decanters of vinegar for the inevitable no, I'm not drunk guests. And yes, you also install a discreet vomitorium, screened by woven rush mats and a trailing grapevine curtain. Classy, you're halfway through sprinkling powdered cinnamon over a decorative melon carving when a servant rushes in. Bad news, she says. The erotic pottery hasn't arrived. You pause. Blink. What do you mean, hasn't arrived? It's missing. The courier says the cart broke. Then bandits. Then bees. You rub your temples. Was this the set with the lion-headed centaur and the amphora of longing? She nods. You mutter something unkind about bandits and bees, then pivot. Plan B, get the plates from the senator's divorce banquet. She hesitates. But those are tragic. Exactly. Tragedy, then comedy. We're keeping the dramatic arc alive. As the sun begins to fade, the lighting crew, i.e., 2 exhausted boys with very long tapers, begin igniting the main walkway torches. Light floods the colonnade. Shadows lengthen like gossip. The stone lions at the gates gleam, and then, the wind shifts, you sniff, something, wrong, too smoky. Not enough time, you race to the herb station. The rosemary basket is overturned. The thyme is missing. In its place, something damp, wilted, and suspiciously basil adjacent. You look to the side. One of the musicians. Flute, of course, has thyme tucked behind his ear like a victory crown. You approach. That's my time, you say. He blinks. I found it. In my herb basket. He tries to charm you with a scale in C minor. You're immune, give it back, you say. He does. Crisis averted. Next, you direct the incense burners, frankincense for the inner rooms. Myrrh near the couches. Patchouli only in the corridor where the Parthians like to dance. You've labeled the burners like war zones, highly flammable. No bardic ballads beyond this point. 1 puff per quadrant. Then, with the kind of calm only chaos can bring, you walk the full length of the triclinium. Everything is in place. The statues glow. The cushions smolder. The scent hangs thick like the start of a very dangerous poem. You nod, then the lyre player starts to strum. It's a low, warm note. The kind that vibrates in your collarbone and makes people wonder if they're about to fall in love or declare war. The orgy has not even begun, and already, it's a masterpiece. There's something about the first guest that always hits differently. You hear the knock. Well, not so much a knock as a triple clink of polished bronze against a ceremonial shield, and your stomach does that little cartwheel of dread and performance adrenaline. You adjust your tunic, tug your laurel wreath forward precisely 3 centimeters, and put on your face. Not your real face. Your host face. The one that says, yes, I absolutely remember that obscure festival you sponsored last year, even if you're 90% sure that it was someone else entirely. The door swings open. There stands Lucius, philosopher, minor celebrity, an absolute menace to any form of punctuality. Tonight, however, he's early. A worrying sign. He's also drunk. Did I miss the orgy? He asks, eyes wide, toga off one shoulder and already wrinkled like a neglected scroll. His breath smells like vinegar, fennel, and poor decisions. No, Lucius. You're the first to arrive. He grins. Then I call dibs on the couch closest to the lyre. You make a note to move the lyrics later. Lucius stumbles inside, offering unsolicited thoughts on metaphysics and cheese pairings. You lead him toward the courtyard, where the lighting is forgiving and the wine is heavily diluted, mostly for safety. Behind you, the second guest arrives, pretexta, senator's niece, mistress to at least 2 generals. And owner of the largest fan collection in Rome. Tonight's fan, swan feathers dyed seafoam green, studded with sapphires and exactly 1 peacock eyelash. She sweeps past you with a nod that could either mean thank you for inviting me or I own your soul now. Either way, she's placed herself near the wine station, more guests trickle in, you greet each like you're running for office in 3 different provinces at once. A young patrician with a love of figs and zero spatial awareness steps directly into a candle platter. You blow out the flames before his sandals catch fire. A mystery cultist arrives, cloaked, murmuring something in Greek while holding a small jar of oil that pulses faintly. You offer him a cushion and avoid eye contact. Then comes the elephant. Technically, it's not invited. It belongs to Senator Glabrio, who decided at the last moment that walking was beneath him and opted for a grand entrance via Pachyderm Express. The beast pauses at the gates, then sneezes. You flinch as a floral fountain erupts from its trunk, jasmine, maybe, or someone's experimental perfume. Senator Glabrio descends with great effort and zero grace. Did you get my scroll? He booms. I did. You lie. He beams. Good. It had my seating preferences and my cousin's horse's dietary restrictions. You nod with the practiced serenity of someone who has never, not once, read a senator's scroll all the way through. Back in the atrium, the crowd thickens, laughter, the clink of goblets, the gentle thud of someone passing out behind a statue. It's all beginning to blur into that pre-feast hum, when anticipation hums beneath every silk fold and sandal strap. You spot Camilla, priestess of some fringe fertility deity, gliding in with a smile that suggests she knows your astrological chart better than you do. She smells like honey and commitment issues. Close behind, Tiberius, who once declared a philosophical war on spoons and now eats only with slices of toasted bread. You watch him try to scoop olives with crusty focaccia. He's losing. The matching twins arrive next, identical in dress, mannerism, and, according to rumor, marital status. No one is sure if they're siblings, lovers, or a performance art piece. You seat them between the Parthians and the senator who collects wigs, just to see what happens, and then, the moment you always dread, someone brings up the seating chart. Excuse me, purrs a voice. It belongs to Decima, who once sued a neighbor for blocking moonlight from her sunroom. I noticed, she continues, unfolding a copy of the parchment with exaggerated flair, that I'm seated between a rhetorician and a vegetarian. You brace yourself. I'm allergic to both, she says. You open your mouth to reply when your assistant materializes like an apologetic ghost. There's a situation with the oysters, they whisper. Of course there is. You delegate Decima's problem to a junior scribe and hurry toward the food atrium, dodging a limping flutist and an overly affectionate goat on the way. In the food atrium, Thrax is yelling again. This time, it's about the oysters smelling like Neptune's armpit after war. He's holding a shell up like it personally insulted his ancestry. You sniff. He's not wrong, you sigh. Get the honey-roasted snails instead. Those are for the senators. Then swap the labels. Senators love labels. Back in the garden, the moon has risen, guests now shimmer in torchlight, draped in silk and intent. You spot flirtation blooming like a rash near the cushions. Someone's playing drinking games using philosopher quotes and questionable Latin, and then you hear it, hoofbeats, which can mean only one thing, Aurelius is late. Again, he arrives in full cavalry gear, despite retiring years ago, dramatically dismounting like he's just returned from the Punic Wars. Everyone claps, mostly out of confusion. He hands you a bag of apples. From Gaul, he says, they hum if you listen. You don't listen. You pocket them. You'll deal with their alleged musical talents later. You show her to her seat. She doesn't sit, she simply places a single rose on the table, then disappears into the crowd. You take a deep breath. The guests are here. The torches are lit. The wine is flowing. At least 3 people are probably already making questionable decisions behind the colonnade. You look up, the stars are out, it begins. You always tell yourself it'll be fine, this time, people will arrive in reasonable order. That someone else will make the first terrible joke. That the liar player won't try to seduce the high priestess's donkey again. That, maybe, just maybe, this will be the party where no one dramatically faints into the bonfire by mistake, and every single time, you are wrong, it always starts with a knock, or, rather, a clang. Not a polite tap-tap like in the northern provinces, but a full-bodied, ceremonial thud of bronze on bronze. The kind of knock that makes neighbors flinch and loose tiles shiver. It echoes through the stone halls like a public declaration of chaos to come. You exhale. Not a sigh. A battle breath, the orgy has begun, you smooth your tunic, realign your wreath, and brace yourself for guest number one, they're always the hardest. The unpredictable linchpin on which the entire first impression rests. They might be elegant. They might be sticky. They might bring a turtle. You've seen it all. Or thought you had, until now, the doors swing open, enter Lucius Dracontius, philosopher, orator, alleged truth-seeker, and walking bottle of disappointment. You had hoped for someone graceful, someone regal, someone who knows how to sip wine without turning it into a monologue on the tragedy of conscious thought. Instead, you get Lucius, and he's already tipsy. Am I late or early? He asks, toga half slid down one shoulder, exposing a tattoo of what might be a carrot but could just as easily be an ancient curse in poor cursive. You're early. Oh, he says, blinking. Is that bad? You don't answer. You just wave him in and watch as he immediately veers left, straight into the mosaic of Leda and the Swan. That mosaic cost you 3 months' salary and still smells faintly of wet plaster. You silently will it to survive him. Lucius turns back toward you. I brought olives. You look down. He is holding exactly one olive. Between 2 fingers. No dish, no pouch, no explanation. Thank you, you say, and he drops it ceremoniously onto a serving tray like he's just made an offering to Bacchus himself. Behind him, another guest approaches. This one knows how to enter. Pretexta, niece of a senator, scandal magnate, fan collector, and, according to some, a secret contributor to 3 different romantic poetry collections under pseudonyms like The Whispering Fig. Her perfume arrives 2 seconds before she does. Tonight, it's layered with hints of pomegranate, burnt citrus peel, and pure social leverage. Her toga sparkles with what looks like crushed glass, illegal, dangerous, fashionable. Darling, she says, and leans in for a kiss that lands somewhere between cheek and air. I brought my least boring cousin. Said cousin appears behind her, 6'3", clad in transparent linen, holding a mechanical owl that blinks far too often. You offer him a smile, he doesn't blink, the owl does. From that moment, the flood begins, you barely have time to breathe between greetings. It's like hosting a circus, except no one's wearing shoes and someone definitely brought a lion. Each guest brings with them a whirlwind of energy, perfume, and potential property damage. You guide them through the entry hall like a charioteer balancing snakes, gracefully, but sweating. That's when you see her, your aunt. You had forgotten she RSVP'd. She marches through the crowd with the determined pace of a provincial governor during tax season. Her sandals slapping the marble with authority and exhaustion. Her dress is modest. Her brow is not. Tell me, she says without greeting, where is the cheese? You gesture toward the corner where a modest pyramid of aged goat cheese rests between clusters of grapes and 2 inexplicably terrified figs. She stares at it. That's not cheese, she declares. That's embarrassment molded into dairy. She walks away. You will not see her again until dessert, when she delivers a 14-minute speech on the failures of modern Saturnalias, and then, a small miracle, your favorite guest arrives. He's always punctual. Always polite. Always smells faintly of parchment and self-doubt. His name is Marinus, and he's a minor historian who nobody listens to but everybody quotes. Tonight, he's brought a gift, a wax tablet featuring a detailed diagram of ancient irrigation systems, which he presents with bashful pride. I thought perhaps someone would find it arousing. He says, eyes hopeful, you take it like a sacred relic. I love it, you say. And you mean it. Then, chaos, two flutists begin playing simultaneously. Despite strict orders not to start until the third moonrise chant. One is out of tune. The other is in a key only audible to dogs. A goat gets loose, someone screams, the Parthians are here. And everyone instinctively ducks, despite this being a peaceful guest delegation from Parthia and not, in fact, an invasion. You find the goat. You rescue the figs. You reseat a woman who insists her chair is cursed. You intercept a courier carrying a secret love note to someone's mother. You redirect the musicians. You bribe the goat with apricots, and just when you think you can't possibly take another interruption, you hear the trumpet, not a real trumpet. Worse, Gaius Fulgencio Tarsus. You can tell it's him by the elaborate roll of thunder from his entourage, 6 dancers, a live monkey dressed as a senator, and 2 standard-bearers waving banners that read, Fulgencio, light of the western sky. He struts in wearing a tunic made of gold-threaded silk that audibly rustles with every movement. On his belt, a miniature harp. On his head, a crown of baked bread, because fashion should be nourishing. He's already making his way toward the lyre player with intentions that are both romantic and musically impractical. You intercept, Gaius, you say, gently but firmly, can I interest you in any other direction? He sighs. I suppose. And veers toward the bath chamber. You'll find him later holding a philosophical debate with 2 naked marble statues and a very confused cat. You take one deep breath, and then someone yells, the bees are back. You've survived the opening wave. The early guests have come, spilled wine, kissed cousins they probably shouldn't have, and asked where the bread was baked as if it held omens. But now comes the real challenge, the fashionably late, the high-tier aristocrats. The Whisper Network ringmasters. The ones who arrive not when the sun suggests it, but when the room has achieved exactly the right temperature of admiration. They're like migrating storks with larger egos and slightly more expensive sandals, and they are, without exception, always at least 2 hours late. You stand at the edge of the portico, staring out into the dusky garden, watching for movement like a general preparing for cavalry. Your assistant whispers, someone important is arriving, I can feel it, as though sensing tremors in the fabric of the social cosmos. Then, like a bad play cue, it happens. The clatter of hooves, the glint of polished bronze, the scent of cinnamon, incense, and something distinctly unwashed. It's the trio, not their real names, of course, but that's how you know them. 3 senatorial wives who move like synchronized swans and gossip like furies on a day off. They sweep in wearing matching stolas, dyed a shade of imperial blue illegal for commoners to even look at too long. You bow. They don't stop, one of them mutters, your marble's chipped. Another adjusts a gemstone that cost more than your entire atrium. You let them pass, already wondering if your seating chart can survive their gravitational pull. Then comes Tullius Maximus, who arrives dramatically late every time. Tonight, his sandal is broken. You know it the moment you see him. His stride isn't arrogant senator but glorified duck. He clomps forward with a grimace, trailing 2 servants, 1 parrot, and a dwarf playing the cymbals. Where's the cobbler? He demands before hello, there is no cobbler, Tullius. This is an orgy, not a shoemaker's convention. He gasps like you've asked him to walk barefoot through shame. My dignity is at stake. Behind him, Sabina rolls her eyes. Sabina, philosopher, widow, revolutionary, and your 3rd favorite person on earth. She's chewing an almond and wearing a tunic embroidered with what appears to be a map of the underworld, and it lights up in moonlight. You ask, is that glowing? She winks. Don't worry, it's not cursed this time. Together, you triage Tullius's ego. You find a sandal from the emergency accessory trunk, a collection meant for costume malfunctions, wardrobe envy, and drunken togas catching fire. You place the replacement sandal at his feet, he sniffs it. Smells, common. It's imported common, you lie. From Etruria. He nods solemnly and steps in. Crisis averted. Pride intact, you're about to return to supervising the wine dilution ratio, your ratio, 3-to-1 water to wine, there's 1-to-1 ego to tragedy, when your assistant tugs your sleeve again, big one, they whisper, and then you see him, Marcus Aurelius Junius, consul emeritus, part-time philosopher, and full-time thundercloud in human form. He's not late. He's timed. Aurelius doesn't walk. He approaches, as if each step is a verdict. His beard is freshly oiled. His tunic is midnight black, trimmed with gold thread stolen from what was probably a tapestry in Delphi. He carries no wine, no gift. No smile, the air cools slightly. You brace, host, he says, nodding just enough for plausible politeness. You have no dogs tonight. We did. One joined a cult. The other is unionizing. He doesn't laugh. He's reading the room, scanning it for violations of taste, honor, or geometry. Is that marble bust of Cicero, leaning? Not Cicero. His lesser-known brother. Born tilted. You steer him toward his assigned couch, precisely calculated for visibility and ego pacification. Near enough to power, far enough from rivals, just close enough to the citrus wall to suggest freshness. But it's not over, because just as you think you've made it past the peak, the curtain catches fire, not all of it. Just the left edge. Enough to create panic, not enough to justify actual evacuation. Is this part of the theme? A guest yells hopefully, you grab the fire blanket. You smother the flames. You elbow a flutist who's trying to play along with the crackling. Your assistant runs in with a jug of wine, the good wine, and pours it directly onto the last ember. It sizzles like a disgruntled senator. Everyone claps. You take a bow, then someone yells, there's a parrot in the wine. You take a breath. A long one. One of those slow, deep inhalations that philosophers claim can balance the humors. Historians still argue whether humor balancing ever worked outside of scrolls written while drunk. You wade into the crowd, scoop the damp parrot from the punch bowl, and hand it back to its owner. The bird squawks something obscene about grapes. You say, it's learning. They nod proudly. You towel off your hands. The fire is out. The sandal is fixed. The important guests are here. A new musician has taken over from the lyrist. This one plays the kithara and doesn't flirt with livestock. For now, you check the table centerpieces. Still upright. Still scented. No sign of bees, but then, a hush falls, not silence, more like an expectation vacuum. Something, or someone important is about to happen, the late of the late. The headline entrance, the entire atrium shifts, like breath being held collectively by people too full of cheese and secrets, and then, she arrives. It always starts with the scroll, unfurling like a military campaign. Your seating chart stretches across the waxed cedar table in the back prep room. You smooth it down with the flat of your palm, ignoring the faint wine ring left by someone's distracted elbow. The ink is still drying in places. So is your hope. This is not a dinner. This is chess with couches. A single misplacement means war. You eye the roster, each name a potential disaster. There's Gaius Fulgencio Tarsus, professional thunderstorm in a toga, who once flipped a chaise longue because someone called his accent southern. He must never sit near Aurelia Septima, who famously wrote a biting verse comparing him to an overstuffed goose, and read it aloud at Saturnalia, twice. Then there's Julia the Younger, who smiles like a saint but throws olives with sniper precision. If she's within 3 cushions of Lucius Lentulus, they will either flirt or duel, depending on the moon phase, and Decimus the slightly more important, who insists he cannot eat facing west because of a bad augury in his youth. You whisper to yourself, let the gods sort the heavens. I'll sort these cushions. You begin drawing tiny arrows. You draw little panic stars next to problematic people, stars that now cover roughly a third of the scroll. In the atrium, the couches are already arranged in elegant symmetry, 6 clusters of 3, each surrounding an ivory-inlaid table piled high with grapes, honey-soaked walnuts, and mildly judgmental figs. But you know this symmetry is a lie, because soon the people will come, and people are chaos. Take Calpurnia Minor, for instance. Diminutive in name only. Her presence bends conversations around her like gravity. She needs a central seat, but not too central, or Fabia Crispina will accuse you of favoritism and steal the decorative fruit. You give Calpurnia couch 3A. Fabia gets 3C, the gap between them. Strategic. Safe, at least, you think so, until your assistant rushes in, waving a tiny scroll and a look of incoming doom. Change. They hiss. Lucius the Lesser is bringing a +1. You freeze. Lucius the Lesser is not important. Lucius the Lesser does not get a +1. Who is it? You ask, already afraid. Your assistant leans in. It's last night's date. You blink. My last night's date. You ask, no, they whisper. Yours. You pause. Entirely still. Then, with deep, ancient resignation, which one? They whisper the name. Your stomach folds in on itself like a collapsing amphora. That particular date, whose sandals you complimented, whose jokes you politely laughed at, whose ear you accidentally kissed under the mistaken impression it was part of their face. That person is now en route, as someone's unexpected companion. Do they know? You whisper, no, your assistant says. But they brought figs. Figs. The trader's gift of Rome. You scrub your face. You take the scroll back. You find a gap between Thalia, the mute harpist, and Pontius, the old general who only speaks in riddles about soup. That should be neutral ground. You slot them in, scribbling an asterisk with the ferocity of a battlefield oath. Outside, guests begin to flow toward the couches. You breathe deep and march to the field. Showtime. You find yourself walking the winding, uneven cobblestone streets of a village that seems suspended in a liminal space between dusk and deepening night. The air is thick with a cold dampness that settles into your bones, and the faint scent of wood smoke curls around the timber-framed houses. Each house huddles close, their thatched roofs silhouetted against a sky slowly darkening to ink. A low mist clings to the ground, twisting like ghostly fingers around your feet, as the distant tolling of the church bell punctuates the stillness, a slow, sonorous heartbeat marking time in a world where superstition and survival entwine. You clutch your candle tightly, the flickering flame casting long, jittery shadows on the rough-hewn walls as you approach a small, low-ceilinged cottage. The air here smells of burning tallow mingled with the herbal sharpness of crushed rosemary and lavender, a scent meant to ward off evil, or so the villagers believe. Peering through a narrow crack in the door, your eyes slowly adjust to the dim, flickering candlelight within. Inside, a tight circle of villagers sits huddled close around a worn wooden table scarred by years of use. Their faces are a patchwork of worry, suspicion, and faint hope, illuminated unevenly by the dancing flames. At the center of the table lies a small bundle wrapped in faded, threadbare cloth, the child who doesn't quite fit the expectations of the world outside these walls. You observe a gaunt, sharp-eyed woman, the village elder, her voice cracking with age and urgency as she leans forward. This child is no ordinary babe, she says, her words heavy with conviction and fear. The marks upon its skin, the slow steps, it must be the devil's work, or a changeling left by the fairies to trick us all. A younger man, his beard unkempt and eyes wary, shakes his head. Or perhaps the Lord tests us, he counters gently, or maybe it is nature's hand, and we are too quick to judge what we do not understand. You sense the tension rising, as murmurs ripple through the group, fear clashing with compassion, ignorance wrestling with emerging understanding. Historians still argue whether early modern Europe's anxieties about changelings and otherness were primarily attempts to explain disability in the absence of scientific knowledge, or darker mechanisms of social control designed to scapegoat and marginalize those who didn't conform. What's undeniable is the real danger these beliefs posed, often sealing fates with accusations that could lead to exile, imprisonment, or worse. Your fingers tighten around the candle's wooden handle as the child stirs in the bundle, eyes wide with confusion and trust, utterly unaware of the whispered verdicts shaping their fate. The warmth of the flame contrasts sharply with the chill crawling up your spine. Outside, the wind rises, rattling window panes like distant thunder, while a voice lifts in a trembling prayer for protection against dark spirits. The shadows on the walls seem to dance in the flickering light, blurring the line between angel and demon, the innocent and the accused. You realize that you are witnessing a fragile thread woven between love and fear, knowledge and superstition, humanity and cruelty. The midwife, an older woman with weathered hands and a steady gaze, steps forward, her voice softer but no less urgent. Children like this, she says, sometimes carry secret gifts, though those gifts are tangled in their differences. It is our duty to protect them. Yet, those whispers of hope are fragile, easily drowned out by suspicion and fear. You imagine families torn between hope and dread, trying to navigate a world where the unknown was often met with accusation rather than understanding. A mother cradles her child, singing lullabies that weave together ancient folktales and prayers to saints who promise mercy. The cottage's worn wooden chair creaks softly, carved with symbols meant to ward off evil spirits. It feels as if the house itself breathes uneasily beneath the weight of history and superstition. The scent of burning sage and damp earth grounds you in this liminal space, where faith and fear intertwine. Nearby, a young girl watches silently, her wide eyes reflecting the candle's flicker. She is the same age as the child in the bundle but moves with a grace and certainty that feels almost otherworldly. Villagers tell tales of changelings, children swapped at birth by fairies, replaced with imposters meant to trick humanity. These stories were often ways to explain developmental differences that no one understood. You wonder what it must feel like to be that child, misunderstood, feared, yet a source of deep love and resilience. The contradictions twist like smoke curling from the candle, illuminating and obscuring the truth simultaneously. As the night deepens, you hear voices from beyond the village, tales from scholars and clergy debating the spiritual fate of those born different. Some argued these children bore angelic souls, others whispered of demonic possession. These fierce debates raged within the very walls of power, influencing how society treated, or mistreated, the vulnerable. You think about the witch trials sweeping Europe, where fear of the other often turned deadly. Children and adults accused of witchcraft faced brutal punishments, often based on little more than suspicion or difference. Historians continue to debate how much of this was superstition, how much was misogyny, and how much was a desperate attempt to maintain social order amid change. The candle guttering in your hand feels suddenly fragile, like the thin veil separating safety from chaos. You glance back into the cottage, at the child who sleeps fitfully, and you whisper a silent vow, to remember the forgotten, to listen to the stories erased by fear. The night stretches on. The candle burns low. Outside, the wind carries the faint echo of distant church bells, prayers rising in the cold air. You feel the weight of centuries pressing down, centuries of fear, hope, ignorance, and love all intertwined. This tangled history is not just a story to be told, but a mirror reflecting humanity's struggle to understand those who don't fit neatly into its boxes. And it's a reminder that behind every whispered fear, there is a beating heart, fragile, complex, and fiercely alive. You take a deep breath, the candlelight casting a warm glow on your face, and you know this is just one thread in the vast tapestry of human experience, woven with shadows and light, silence and voice, exclusion and compassion. You thought the night couldn't get any more complicated. The fire was out. The sandals were fixed. The rivalries seeded and managed, if only barely. The orgy was humming along in its usual chaotic, sweat-scented symphony. The wine flowed as much as the whispered intrigues, and then, just as you begin to relax, the temple doors creak open. In strides Pontifex Varro, the high priest, the man who claims to speak directly for the gods, and the unofficial instigator of every unlucky event in your life since last Saturnalia. He's dressed in robes so white they hurt your eyes, embroidered with gold thread shaped like tiny lightning bolts. His eyes gleam with the certainty of someone who knows that bad things are coming. And you are going to be very unlucky, citizens, he bellows, voice echoing against marble columns. I bring dire tidings. Mercury, the swift messenger, is in a foul mood. You blink. Mercury. You repeat. The god of messages. The one who supposedly protects travelers, merchants, and people who really love wearing winged sandals. Precisely, Varro says. And his wrath has cast a shadow over tonight's festivities. You scan the crowd. Some laugh nervously. Others clutch amulets. A few quietly cross themselves, fearing the worst. You must not take this lightly, Varro continues, pointing an accusatory finger at the ceiling. Signs are everywhere, omens of disaster, betrayal, and lost sandals. You exhale slowly. You feel the weight of every broken promise, every spilled cup, every ruined outfit tightening around your shoulders like a toga 2 sizes too small. Varro begins recounting the ominous signs: the goat's escape, the flaming curtain edge, the parrot's unscheduled dive bombing into the wine, even the broken sandal of the consul. The gods are angry, he intones. And when Mercury is angry, all paths are fraught with peril. You glance at your watch, though time is a slippery concept tonight, and wonder whether it's too late to bribe the gods with a bigger offering. The chatter grows uneasy, guests begin to whisper. The merriment dims. Some start tying little threads around their wrists, hoping to bind the bad luck. A child's cry somewhere in the corner punctuates the tension. You turn. It's just a drunk servant falling over. Do not underestimate the power of omens, Varro warns. Historians still argue whether these portents were invented by priests to keep control, or if the gods really do meddle in mortal affairs. You let that hang in the air like a half-empty goblet. Your task is clear: manage the fear. Soothe the guests, and keep the orgy just wild enough to prevent a full-on panic. And so, the night deepens, shadows lengthen, and you prepare to dance once more between chaos and control, gods and mortals, sanity and utter madness. You watch as the crowd shifts uneasily, murmurs spreading like wildfire through dry brush. Varro's words settle in the air like a thick fog, and suddenly every spilled drop of wine, every misstep, every stifled cough takes on ominous significance. A well-meaning senator clinks his glass, only to have the rim crack mid-toast. You note the sharp intake of breath from those nearby. Broken wine glasses, one whispers, sure sign of betrayal. You bite back a smile. You remind yourself of that time you accidentally knocked over the sacred urn last year, yet somehow the gods seem to forgive you, probably out of pity. But tonight feels different. You glance toward the altar, where a small bronze statue of Mercury sits, winged helmet slightly askew, caduceus raised in eternal greeting. You wonder if Varro secretly nudged it before his proclamation, a theatrical flair for the dramatic. Guests clutch their amulets and bracelets. A woman delicately removes a necklace and tosses it aside. A man crosses his fingers behind his back, muttering under his breath. Historians still argue whether Romans genuinely believed these omens or simply used them as social tools, a fascinating debate, but not one that helps you calm a room full of superstitious, half-drunk aristocrats. You find yourself performing a delicate dance, whispering reassurances while planting subtle diversions. Look there, you say, nodding toward a group laughing uproariously. Clearly, the gods smile on them. A ripple of forced smiles. A flute player starts an upbeat tune, an ancient melody said to please the gods of good fortune. You smile, silently begging the gods for mercy. Then, something else catches your eye. A shadow moves near the eastern doorway, too swift to be a guest. You squint. Was that a black cat? You blink and the shadow disappears. Probably nothing. Or was it, you remind yourself, the Romans believed cats were both protectors and harbingers, depending on the moon's phase and how many olives had been consumed. You glance back at Varro, who is now solemnly preparing a small ritual, an incense offering meant to appease Mercury. You join him, lighting the incense and watching the smoke curl upward, hoping it carries your prayers and apologies to the heavens. Suddenly, a loud bang echoes from the courtyard. Glass shatters, you freeze, the servant stumbles in, breathless, the sacred olive tree has lost a branch. Gasps, an ill omen. Someone cries. You hide a sigh. How many ill omens does one orgy need? You quickly usher everyone back to the main room, turning the conversation to the latest scandal in the Senate, anything to distract from the omens piling up like fallen leaves. As the night wears on, the tension thickens. Guests glance nervously at their neighbors, wondering who might be the next unlucky victim, and through it all, you keep juggling, weaving the threads of superstition, rumor, and celebration into a delicate tapestry, hoping the gods will not unravel it before dawn. You find yourself pulled aside by Livia, the matron famed not only for her sharp tongue but also her uncanny ability to sense spiritual vibrations. Tonight, she clutches a small pouch of herbs, muttering about Mercury's foul mood spreading misfortune like wildfire. You must warn the others, she insists, her eyes darting nervously. Tonight's stars are aligned for disaster. You nod, humoring her, while trying not to let the worry seep in yourself. You've seen nights like this, omens pile up, guests grow tense, and the atmosphere thickens with whispered fears. Remember the story of Emperor Claudius, Livia continues, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, who, ignoring a similar omen, found himself betrayed by his closest advisor. You let the tale linger, watching your guests' reactions, a shiver here, a quick glance there, a few crossing themselves again. Somewhere, a lute player begins a mournful tune, the strings trembling like the very nerves in your spine. You remind yourself, historians still debate whether Roman superstition was genuine belief or a political tool for control. Either way, tonight it's your job to keep the peace. Then, suddenly, a shriek cuts through the music. You turn just in time to see Marcus, a guest known for his fiery temper, clutching his chest and staggering backward. A faint pallor creeps over his face. You rush to his side, only to discover he's been pricked by a stray thorn while reaching for a grape. A bad sign, Livia says solemnly, watching the scene unfold. You roll your eyes but say nothing. The tension spikes again. You scan the crowd for a distraction and spot your old ally, Sabina, who waves a hand and calls for more wine. The gesture breaks the spell momentarily, laughter bubbling up as glasses clink. You breathe a little easier, but then Varro steps forward again, announcing a quick ritual to cleanse the air. You watch as he sprinkles salt, waves his hands, and intones prayers in a tongue older than Rome itself. The guests watch silently, some nodding, others skeptical. You wonder how many gods are really listening. The night wears on, omens pile up, but so does the wine, and somehow, the delicate balance holds. You had expected chaos. You even planned for it. After all, orgies are not built on discipline but on the illusion of spontaneity, like a play where no one remembers their lines, but everyone insists the show must go on. But you didn't account for this much whispering. Every hallway you walk down now vibrates with secrets. Lovers lean into shadows behind frescoed columns, fingertips grazing as they exchange coded glances across candlelight. A couple passes by you slowly, too slowly, like they're trying to make time stand still, or at least pretend they weren't just making out behind the statue of Diana. You clear your throat. They scatter. You glance at Diana. Her stone eyes are rolled so hard they might crack. You remind yourself, managing the logistics of lust is part of your job description. You are, after all, an orgy planner, not that it ever made it onto a resume. And tonight, your skill set includes discreetly separating rival suitors, managing body oil supplies, and, new tonight, translating nonverbal flirtation codes involving fruit placement. You watch as a slave refills someone's wine cup to the brim, lets it overflow just slightly, then sets it down with a wink. You furrow your brow. That used to mean let's disappear behind the curtain. Now it could mean I've hidden your brooch or meet me in the garden next to the statue of that suspiciously muscular Neptune. You noted in your mental scroll of signal systems. The Romans may have invented concrete and aqueducts, but their true innovation was a language of seduction so elaborate it needed footnotes. Some flirted by adjusting sandal straps. Others left trails of honey-dipped figs to be followed like sensual breadcrumbs. And of course, nothing screamed "I want you" louder than accidentally dropping your toga, then pretending you didn't notice. You round a corner and find a couple mid-whisper, their faces flushed, their hands too far south for diplomacy. They freeze when they see you. "Oh," the woman says, clearly noble, definitely married, and wearing the look of someone who will bribe you if you don't mention this to anyone. You sigh. Behind the fresco, not in front of it. We pay good money for restorations. They apologize. You hand them a fig and shoo them off discreetly. You pass a fresco of Hercules wrestling a lion and pause. He looks like he could use a break too. You'd think, by now, the liaisons would get less complicated, but no. The more wine that's poured, the more hidden messages fly across the room, each goblet raised not for thirst, but to declare intent. A red grape passed with the left hand means "I'll meet you behind the statue of Fortuna." A green olive placed near the lampstand. "I'm watching you, and your spouse might be, too." And every time someone wipes their mouth with their sleeve, it's not just poor manners, it's code. Code for which bedroom is unlocked, which rival has been neutralized, and which guard can be bribed. You sigh, this is not seduction. This is warfare in silk robes, and you are the frontline general with a clipboard no one respects. Across the triclinium, you catch Lucius, that boyish senator's nephew, trying to pass a scroll disguised as a napkin. It drops mid-hand off, unrolling across the floor. Revealing poetry that rhymes suspiciously with someone's name who's very much not his wife. You move quickly, stepping on the scroll before a slave can pick it up. Lucius flushes crimson. You smile politely and hand it back, whispering, "At least try metaphor next time." He nods solemnly, as if you've imparted the wisdom of the Sibyl. Nearby, someone accidentally knocks over a fruit bowl. Figs scatter everywhere. You hear a collective gasp. It was arranged in a deliberate pattern. Now the message is scrambled, and somewhere, someone thinks they're being invited to the wrong bed. You take a moment to remember what the original configuration meant. 4 figs in a triangle with a date in the center. Definitely an invitation to a 3-person rendezvous. Add pomegranate seeds and it gets complicated. Join me and my current lover for a secret tryst before midnight. Behind the garden arch, someone scoops up the fruit mess and apologizes. The damage is done. In another room, a reputation assassination is unfolding. You peek through a velvet curtain and see 2 senators' wives pretending to admire a mural of Bacchus. But their eyes flick to a nearby girl, barely of marrying age, who is laughing too freely with a married man. One wife raises her cup and murmurs, "Her mother was no better." You slip away before the gossip morphs into a public scandal. You pause in the hallway, listening. Every room hums with innuendo. Laughter echoes like a promise and a threat. And you know that somewhere, within the golden glow of torchlight, someone is about to do something that will require your discretion, your silence, or your very careful cleaning crew. You find Callistus, your trusted aide, lounging by the foot baths. "Send extra wine to room 8, you whisper. "And double the attendance. I don't trust the senator in there with either of those dancers." Callistus nods. "Also, the woman in the green stola? She's switched bracelets 3 times. I think she's been seduced by at least 4 people." You sigh. Gods help us. Let's hope they stagger the rendezvous. "I'm not scheduling an orgy within an orgy." Callistus smirks. "Isn't that what we're doing already?" You don't answer. You're already calculating timelines in your head. Who's drunk enough to forget, who's just sober enough to remember, and how long before someone confuses an invitation with an insult. She's reciting to a young soldier who pretends to listen, but his eyes keep drifting toward her collarbone. She notices, "You like the rhythm?" She purrs, yes. The meter is very symmetrical. You stifle a laugh and keep moving. At the edge of the peristyle, an older man clutches a scroll tightly against his chest. He looks torn between reading it aloud or eating it out of panic. You recognize him, Gaius, a magistrate with the moral spine of overcooked pasta. "Don't do it," you say calmly. "I wasn't, you were." He sighs. "It's poetry. It's blackmail. Burn it before someone else does." He nods and wanders off toward a brazier. You glance upward, just in time to see a silk sash flutter down from a balcony. It drapes over a torch and nearly catches fire. You run to grab it. As you shake off the singed edge, a woman appears above, giggling. "Oops. Wrong window." You raise an eyebrow. "I assume the toga that followed it belongs to the consul." "Maybe." You hand her the sash. "Tell him his wife is looking for him. And she's not wearing sandals." She pales. You walk away before she asks for help. Elsewhere, someone is playing a double game. Literally, you overhear a conversation behind the atrium fountain. Two women, one betrothed, one recently widowed, gossiping about the same man, unaware they're both seeing him tonight. You lean against the wall, listening as they describe his dimples in identical language. When one suggests sneaking away with him after the next song, the other agrees, still not realizing they're talking about the same person. You blink twice. This will end poorly. You send a runner, young Felix, who owes you more than a few favors, with instructions, intercept the man in question and accidentally lock him in the library with wine and 2 scrolls of erotic poetry. It won't solve the problem, but it will buy you 20 minutes, time enough to redirect both women toward better options, or at least toward each other. You collapse briefly into a chaise lounge, trying to catch your breath. The candlelight flickers. Somewhere, a flute trembles into a slow, sensuous tune. You inhale the air, sweat, sandalwood, honey, scandal. Then, you hear it, a scream. You bolt upright. A crowd forms around the central mosaic. You push through to find a man collapsed, a tunic covering his face. He's groaning. You kneel beside him. What happened? He mistook a clay vase for a chamber pot. Someone offers. You wince. The man mumbles, "I was seduced too hard." You nod, solemn. It happens. The crowd disperses, chuckling. You help the man up, hand him water, and direct him toward a couch far from the action. Then, someone taps your shoulder. You turn. It's the Vestal, here on a dare, draped in a cloak that only barely hides her uniform. She smiles. "Tell me. Do you think breaking vows counts if no one remembers it?" You groan internally. She grins wider. Behind her, someone drops another curtain. You have lost track of how many toga straps have snapped tonight. Still 2 hours until dawn, and you haven't even found the senator's missing son yet. You exhale. The sun rises. The scandals sleep. You knew there would be scheming. It's Rome, after all, and any room with more than 2 senators automatically produces a conspiracy. But you had hoped, perhaps naively, that an orgy might soften their political instincts. That maybe, just maybe, when people were half naked and smeared in perfumed oil, they'd be too distracted to plan the collapse of a political rival. You were wrong. It starts with the honeyed dates, golden, sticky, perfectly arranged on a tray carried by a servant who's trying not to blush at all the things he's overheard tonight. The dates are more than dessert, they're signals, subtle but potent. You know the code, because you created half of it back in your early days working as an assistant to a certain senator who is now conspicuously absent. 1 date, untouched, means I abstain. 2 dates on a plate equals we speak after midnight. A date split and shared. Your vote is mine, or else. You scan the room. In the triclinium, Senator Plautus is pretending to listen to a poet recite verses about Mars and war. but his eyes keep darting toward the governor from Cecilia, who's lounging with the casual air of someone who just funded 3 temples and bribed 4 jurors before lunch. You sidle past a curtain just in time to catch a murmur. "He's promised the aqueduct contract to Cornelius," says a voice you recognize. "Lucilla, wife of a general and owner of the sharpest tongue in the 7 hills," a snort. "Cornelius couldn't engineer a bathhouse if you handed him the bricks." You peek in. 3 women, technically married, unofficially the engine room of half the empire's infrastructure decisions. They sip pomegranate wine, passing candied figs like coded missives. One leans close and whispers, "If he doesn't back out, we tell his wife about the dancer." They clink goblets. A deal is sealed, and just like that, the late-night orgy has transformed into a Senate session in silk. You sigh. You should have prepared a spreadsheet. A few feet away, 2 praetors are locked in a debate disguised as flirtation. "I hear you support the new grain tax," one says, licking honey from his fingers. "Only if my provinces get their fair share," the other murmurs, dabbing wine from his chin. "Fair, of course, being defined entirely by me." Their eyes glitter like drawn blades. You resist the urge to hand them both a stylus and demand they write it down. At least then you'd have documentation for the inevitable fallout. At the corner couch, someone drops a honeyed date into the lap of Tribune Flavius, who blinks at it like it's just announced his re-election chances. He picks it up, inspects it, then glances at the woman who tossed it. An ambassador's daughter with eyes like a tax audit. She winks, you look away. You're not legally allowed to get involved in foreign affairs. Not since the Egyptian caper, which you still maintain wasn't your fault. Strictly speaking, someone calls your name, it's Tiberius, one of the friendly senators, which means he only betrays you if it's profitable, and always buys you wine afterward. He pats the space next to him. "Join me. Let's talk legislation." You raise an eyebrow. "Is that what they're calling it now?" He laughs. "You've been working too hard. Relax. Or at least pretend to." You sit. A platter of olives arrives. Each one, you suspect, holds more leverage than a full treasury speech. Tiberius leans close. "Listen. There's going to be a motion tomorrow. Something about military funding. If you happen to know which way Cassia leans, you stop him with a look. I run orgies, not alliances, you say. At least not officially." He shrugs. "Officially is just a toga we all wear." You glance around the room. He's not wrong. Over by the colonnade, someone is reenacting a scene from a gladiator play. It involves a sword, 2 cushions, and the consul's youngest son. The symbolism is a little too on the nose. A whisper floats by, he promised Syria to his cousin. Syria. You make a mental note. Tomorrow's headlines will write themselves, and then, as if summoned by your internal narrator, in walks Consul Petronius, draped in gold-threaded robes, radiating self-importance and sandal polish. He surveys the room like a lion visiting a petting zoo. He makes a beeline toward the heated pool, where the warm water isn't the only thing boiling. You follow at a safe distance, under the guise of checking wine levels. Petronius sinks into the water beside the elderly proconsul Verinius, whose memory is so erratic he once accused a statue of treason. "Good evening," Petronius purrs. "How fares your lovely province?" Verinius squints. "Which one?" Petronius chuckles. "The one with the port. And the pirates. And the lucrative tariffs." Verinius grunts. "Ah. That one." They begin to trade pleasantries so sharp they might as well be throwing javelins. Each sentence hides a threat. Each compliment hums with venom. You edge away, into a side room where the air is thick with sandalwood and secrets. Here, the real deals happen. Over smoked dates and wine warm just above body temperature, people decide who will rise, who will fall, and who will wake up wondering where their toga went. you catch a whispered phrase, vote buying scandal, and resist the urge to scream into a cushion, you don't get paid enough for this. Especially not when someone mistakes you for a messenger and tries to bribe you with pearls to deliver a sealed note. You politely decline, though you pocket the pearls. For safety, more whispers, her dowry's missing. Did you see how close they were sitting? She has dirt on the governor's wife. Someone's poisoned the dates. You blink. Wait, what? You turn just in time to see someone dramatically collapse into a beanbag, clutching their stomach, gasps, servants rush over, turns out, he just ate too fast, false alarm, but now the suspicion is out. You can feel it, like. But now the suspicion is out. You can feel it, like the tremor before a riot. Every guest is suddenly examining their food, their company, their life choices. You leap into action, loudly declaring a spontaneous dance-off in the West Wing. It works, somewhat, at least it redirects attention long enough for the chef to double-check the date platter. No poison. Just too much honey. You tell him to water down the syrup. Across the room, a group of scribes are playing a drinking game that involves reciting imperial edicts backward. One of them accidentally invokes a law repealed 2 reigns ago. The room pauses. You assure everyone it doesn't count unless said 3 times, they resume. You catch your reflection in a polished urn. You look like someone who's aged 5 years in 5 hours. Not bad, considering. Then, you hear your name again, this time, it's from Gala, head of the Vestal security detail. Yes, they have that now. She leans in, all seriousness. We found a scroll tucked inside the statue of Jupiter. It outlines tonight's guest list, cross-referenced with known voting patterns. Your stomach sinks, so someone's polling from the orgy? Looks that way. You pinch the bridge of your nose. Do me a favor. Drop it in the bathhouse furnace. She nods. You glance out at your guests, still laughing. Still drinking. Still bribing each other with fruit. The illusion holds, for now, but you know better than to relax. Tomorrow, some of these people will wake up richer. Some will wake up with regrets. Some with new alliances. And at least one will wake up wondering why there's a goat in their room, and you'll be right here, planning the next party, because in Rome, politics never sleeps, and neither do you. You head back to the atrium, wine jug in hand, part disguise, part emergency backup for diplomacy. You can't tell anymore whether you're an event planner, a political mediator, or just an overqualified server with a remarkable capacity for absorbing secrets. Someone grabs your elbow. It's Servius, the senator who owns half the grain distribution in Latium and, somehow, even less tact than he has morals. I have a problem, he whispers. Congratulations, you reply. He frowns. A real one. You raise an eyebrow. Only real problems here involve a missing guest, a live peacock, and 3 different households demanding ownership of the same vomitorium. He doesn't laugh. She knows, he says. My wife. She knows about Lydia. You blink. The Lydia with the pet monkey, or the Lydia who recites erotic poetry to jars of olive oil? He grimaces. The second one. Ah, then you'd better hope her bracelet's still green, you murmur. He stares blankly. You sigh. Green means peace offering. Gold means she's about to tell the Vestals everything. Red means she's already written to your mother. He pales. I'll check the bracelet, you add, because that's apparently your job now too. Across the hall, musicians are transitioning to something vaguely Thracian and entirely inappropriate for a negotiation, which naturally means 3 senators are now using the rhythm to time out coded hand gestures. You count, a 4-finger tap, a wrist flick, a nose touch. Gods help you. You think they've invented a dance-based voting block. You duck into the kitchen, where the heat hits you like a Pompeii memory. The cooks are arguing about the spice ratio in the honey glaze. Again. You're halfway through mediating that when a messenger barrels in holding a tray with 2 uneaten dates and a message, from the governor of Hispania. Urgent. You sigh and take it. Inside the rolled parchment, 3 names, 1 circle, 1 crossed out. You squint. This is not a love note. It's a reshuffled military appointment list. You crumple it and stuff it into the fire beneath the roast duck. Not tonight. Back in the corridor, someone's tried to hang a curtain across a marble bust of Juno, probably to shield a tryst from divine judgment. The curtain falls. You catch the glimmer of 2 guilty faces, and the smell of too much lavender oil. No divine shielding, you say. Juno sees all. A voice behind you sighs. Yes. That's the problem. You turn. It's Kasia, the senator who can topple half the forum with a wink and a forged property deed. Her toga is pristine, her sandals cost more than your entire family's villa, and her eyes glitter like she's already rewritten the inheritance laws. She links her arm through yours. Walk with me. You know better than to refuse. She leads you through the peristyle, where birds chirp too innocently, and lanterns flicker like nervous eyes. I want you to know, she says casually, that I will support the road's initiative. You nod, cautiously, but, she adds, I'd like a little insurance. In case someone tries to reroute the project. What kind of insurance? Say, a confirmation that Lucius won't vote. Or breathe. Either is fine. You don't answer. Your silence is its own kind of diplomacy. Kasia smiles. I knew you'd be reasonable. She kisses your cheek and glides away. You sit on the fountain's edge and watch the torchlight flicker over koi that have somehow survived 2 previous parties and a thrown sandal. You consider screaming into the water. Instead, you drink, then you hear it again, rustling, whispers, the language of Rome's favorite sport, betrayal. You follow it, in the small courtyard with the fig trees. 3 senators are pretending to admire architecture. They speak in epithets and metaphors, each one more transparent than the last. Imagine if a certain aqueduct were to experience delays, one says, biting into a figure, especially if its engineer were suddenly reassigned to Egypt. Another adds, the third smiles. We'd need someone reliable. Someone in this very courtyard. They all laugh, too loud, too quickly. You shuffle back to the corridor. It's too late for clean hands. Someone slaps a scroll into your hand. What's this? You ask. Budget revisions, they whisper. Signed by half the room. You check. It's a menu, but someone's written figures on the back, denarii, votes, grain subsidies. You recognize your own name, you cross it out, someone else hands you a honeyed almond. No code there, just kindness. You take it and chew, a breath, then the curtain rustles again. Out steps Senator Maximus, the one with the lazy eye, the sharp tongue, and a memory for favors so exact it's terrifying. Enjoying yourself? He asks, define enjoyment. He laughs. Fair. Listen, there's a motion I need passed next week. Boring stuff, grain ratios, transport logistics, blah blah. But if it fails, a lot of slaves will starve. And so will some voters. Why tell me? He shrugs. Because you're the only one in this room with a moral compass, and the sense not to use it. You stare at him, that's deeply insulting, you say, and yet true. You say nothing, he leans in. Just think about it. I'll send more almonds. Then he vanishes into the steam room. You pocket the rest of the almond. Never waste leverage. Somewhere in the atrium, a cheer goes up. Someone has confessed an affair. Someone else has declared candidacy. A third person is trying to seduce both. You lose track, and then, the final twist, a foreign emissary stands, taps a cup with his ring, and declares, to the new coalition. Silence. You did not approve of this toast, you don't even know there was a new coalition. Everyone looks at everyone else, half the guests smile, the other half panicked, and you drink the last of your wine, smile vaguely, and whisper to your aide, "Get the goat out of the senator's room before sunrise." Because some betrayals you can't plan for, and some, well, they've been marinating in honey all night. You wake before the sun, because the aftermath never sleeps, your eyes are crusted with sleep, or possibly wine residue, and your feet still smell faintly of myrrh and spilled fig syrup. You sit up slowly, bones cracking like amphory dropped from a careless slave's hands. The party is over. Officially. Spiritually. Politically. Possibly metaphysically, and now comes the hardest part of your job, surviving the cleanup. You step barefoot into the corridor. The marble tiles are sticky. Someone's sandal sticks to your foot as you lift it, definitely not yours. You kick it off with the elegance of a centurion trying ballet. The hallway is eerily silent, save for a soft groan echoing from somewhere near the caldarium. You note it. Not for help, just to avoid stepping on anyone later. First checkpoint, the courtyard. You push open the door, and the smell hits you. It's a cocktail of stale wine, crushed herbs, sweat, and that oddly sweet scent of too much perfume layered on too little bathing. You brace yourself, the sun is just beginning to rise. Soft golden light touches the scattered ruins of what once resembled a Roman orgy and now looks more like the aftermath of a Dionysian battlefield. Amphorae lie shattered like fallen soldiers. Grapes are mushed into the flagstones. There's a toga draped on a statue of Mars in a way that makes the god look bashful, and then you see it, the goat. You don't own a goat. It's chewing on someone's laurel wreath with the determined focus of a creature that knows it's not supposed to be there but has zero intention of leaving. You sigh. Last time, it was a chicken. You've leveled up, you survey the courtyard. Passed out guests lie like fallen gladiators, most of them only half covered by anything resembling clothes. One man is snoring into a bowl of garum. Another clutches an empty jug like a war trophy. You spot the senator's son, finally, curled up beneath the offering table, hugging a ceremonial urn. You make a note to tell his father he was contemplating the divine. Your aide, Callistus, appears like a hungover shadow. His hair is tousled, his eyes bloodshot, and he's holding a broken lyre. Status, you ask. He squints at the goat. Alive. Confused. Possibly drunk, you or the goat, he shrugs. Yes, you rub your temples. Start with the north wing. Clear the vomit. Collect all scrolls, political, poetic, or otherwise. Separate by risk factor, color-coded risk, as always. He groans and limps off. You turn to the statue of Venus, where someone has scrawled, "Venus was here," in charcoal across her pedestal. You sigh. Again, your cleanup team arrives, dozens of slaves who were smart enough to pretend deafness the night before. They look at the mess with the dead eyes of people who've done this before. Because they have, you begin triage, cushions to be cleaned, goblets to be retrieved, spilled oil to be blotted, secrets to be forgotten. Each task requires delicacy. One wrong whisper and a scandal erupts. One missed earring and a duel reignites. You find a list scrawled on parchment beneath the fruit tray. It's a tally of names, some with hearts, others with daggers. You burn it immediately. In the garden, you encounter more guests. One is bathing in the fountain. You pretend not to see them. Another is trying to seduce a statue of Apollo. You intervene, gently. Not him, you murmur. He's emotionally unavailable. They nod, sway, and wander off. Back inside, you check the storage room. It's half empty. Wine is gone, of course. But so is the sack of exotic spices and, more mysteriously, one entire suit of armor. You jot that down. Might be important. You find Octavia the poetess asleep atop 3 senators. You leave a jug of water beside them. They'll need it. You pause by the central mosaic, once pristine, now littered with olive pits and sandal straps. A single fig rests at the center. Symbolic. You choose not to analyze it. Callistus returns. Found a scroll with love poetry and tax reform on the same page, standard issue, you reply. Burn it, he holds up a slipper. Recognize this, you do. It belongs to the Vestal. You both exchange a glance and say nothing. By mid-morning, the courtyard is clearer. Guests begin to stir. Some pretend they were never unconscious. Others groan and demand water, food, or explanations. A man grabs your tunic. Did I declare war on someone last night, you consider? No. But you did call a centurion mumsy, he nods solemnly. Could be worse, Callistus returns, holding the goat. What now? Name it, you say. Feed it. Then find out who it belongs to. Callistus eyes the goat. I'm calling him Senator. He bites, you smile. Fitting, by midday, the villa almost resembles its former grandeur. Incense burns in every room. Musicians play soft lyre melodies to soothe heads and egos. Slaves serve honey cakes and watered wine. Someone has hung fresh togas on every door. A small mercy, you sit, finally, on a clean cushion. You survived, but then the courier arrives, a scroll. Sealed in red wax. Official, you open it. Read it. Blink, another orgy, you whisper. Tonight, Callistus stares. You're joking, you hand him the scroll, he reads. Groans. Drops the goat, it runs off, wreath in mouth, you lean back, of course there's another one, you close your eyes. Just for a second, because tomorrow, it all starts again, but before that, before the next flood of satin, sin, and suspicious citrus, you have to get through today, you stand. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone who's been in battle and expects a second round before lunch, Callistus returns, this time dragging a broom and an air of spiritual defeat. No more goats, he mutters. There's always another goat, you reply. That's the job. You both look at the courtyard again. It's technically clean. But spiritually, it still smells like shame, cinnamon, and unresolved ambition. You walk past a musician trying to tune his lyre using a snail shell as a reference tone. You don't question it. You don't have the strength. You check on the atrium. A man is asleep in the fish basin. Not floating. Curled. Like a carp contemplating its mistakes, you sigh, grab a towel, and prod him gently. He flinches. Blinks up at you. Did the orgy go well? You smile in the way only someone haunted by 14 kinds of spilled wine and one dangerously poetic senator can smile. You lived. That counts. The kitchens are next. It's a disaster zone, charred honey. Trampled grapes, fish bones arranged in what may be a curse. One cook lies on the floor, mumbling, I told them not to deep fry the oysters, they never listen. Another is scraping cinnamon off the ceiling with a ladle, you nod to them both. Heroes. Broken, sticky heroes, you spot your lead kitchen slave holding a pomegranate like it personally insulted her. Status? You ask, she shrugs. We can feed 50, if no one minds that it all tastes like figs and regret. Better than politics. She nods. She gets it, you step outside again. The sun is higher now. The kind of sun that judges. In the garden, a naked man is watering roses with a goblet of wine, you raise a finger. About to protest, then realize he's quoting Virgil, you lower the finger. Priorities, instead, you check the guest book, it's a mess. Names smeared. Some entries were replaced with drawings of ducks. One page reads simply, I was never here. Fair, you find one interesting line, though, Tell Kasia I forgive her, even if the goat doesn't. You underline it. Could be blackmail material. Or a psalm lyric. Rome's weird like that. Callistus reappears, chewing a date. I checked the West Wing. And someone released moths in the linen closet. Decorative ones, apparently. They're now nesting in the senator's silk. Of course they are. He wipes his hands. Also, the emperor's cousin left behind a wig. It's breathing. You don't respond right away, then lock it in the wine cellar. Pray it doesn't multiply. By mid-afternoon, the villa is presentable. Smelling burnt rose and expensive denial, the fountains gurgle. The statues gleam. Most of the guests have wandered off, vaguely ashamed, vaguely satisfied. You find a hairpin in the shape of a dolphin lodged in a central mosaic. You pick it up. Slip it into your sleeve. For safekeeping. Or leverage. You never know, you stretch. Your back cracks like an old scroll, and then, the courier returns, a different one. Younger. Sweatier. Eyes wide with fear and admiration, he bows. Hold out another scroll. You consider not taking it, you really, really consider it. But you do, you always do, you break the seal. This one is worse than expected. You read it twice, then hand it to Callistus without a word. He reads. Blinks. Read again. Is this a marriage proposal? Technically, you say, it's an invitation to arrange a marriage proposal disguised as a diplomatic celebration involving nude harpists and a live falcon. He rubs his forehead. How many guests? 400. Minimum. Theme. You look at the scroll again. Myth, mirth, and mutual political benefit. Callistus exhales through his teeth. Should I alert the costume slaves? Alert everyone. And start training a new goat. By early evening, you've reorganized the cellar. Someone had been storing illicit scrolls under the wine barrels again. Mostly satire, one surprisingly sweet poem about olives, and a diagram labeled Emergency Toga Fold, Seductive Edition. You file them all into the risk room. Yes, you have a risk room. It's behind the tapestry of Neptune seducing a dolphin. Because no one looks there, you update the archive scroll. Outside, the sun sets in molten orange. Guests are gone, goats accounted for, cushions replaced, togas folded. Wine restocked. You and Callistus sit quietly near the fire basin, sipping whatever's left from the safe amphora. He raises his cup, to tomorrow's madness. You clink, to tonight's peace, brief as it is. You both drink. The silence is almost holy. Then, a crash from the courtyard. You both flinch. A peacock struts in, trailing silk. You stare. Callistus groans. That bird died last week. You blink. Then sip again. It got better. Somewhere far away, in a vineyard you haven't visited yet, the sun is probably setting over rows of tranquil grapes. But here, in Rome, in your marble-wrapped whirlwind of wine, scandal, and administrative survival, you sit among ruins remade into routine, and you realize something. You're not just surviving the aftermath, you're getting better at it, and that, truly, is terrifying. They say in Rome, information is power. And in your line of work, silence can be worth more than gold. By day, you're the celebrated orgy planner, meticulous, charismatic, always on point. Guests praise your ability to choreograph chaos. But once night falls, something else happens. You become the discretion broker. Your phone, a humble wax tablet and read, won't ring. No notifications, no alerts. But the messages do come. A sealed note slipped into your hands under the guise of forgotten sandals. A stifled cough in the corridor followed by a whispered need to talk. A servant, eyes darting, handing you a folded scroll in exchange for a discreet nod and a bronze coin. The demands are, keep this scandal off the Senate floor, ensure no letter leaks to Rome's gossip mills, stall that divorce petition, just for a week, locate the missing guest who stole that necklace, make sure no one mentions the goat in tomorrow's newspaper. These are the tasks you handle on commission. And the pay? Depending on the client, silence might cost thousands, or double, if the bribes are juicy enough. Tonight, you're juggling both roles. The orgy rages above, while underneath, in your hidden office, a dimly lit antechamber with faded frescoes and a single oil lamp, you're meeting your first client of the dawn shift. You glance at the wax tablet, midwife Lucilla. She's been panic calling since midnight. Problem? She delivered a senator's illegitimate child on this property. The besotted father is desperate, the mother must never know. She offers you pearls for every vaporous inch of your discretion. You gesture at her to sit on a low stool. She's pale, shaking, her tunic disheveled. She smells faintly of herbs and fear. How bad? You ask gently, her eyes darted. She swallows. They rioted when they thought their son fathered it. You nod. Which son? She claps a hand to her mouth. Lucius. That one. Ah. Senator Lucius, champion of family values. How deliciously ironic, you demand details. She outlines a half-believed rumor, a wine-fueled accusation, 2 chairs overturned, and a cousin's lipstick stain that nearly cracked the Senate marriage vote. You take notes, code words only. You slide the wax tablet back, payment. She reveals a string of pearls. Perfectly round, still glowing with morning dew. You accept them and leave her trembling in the antechamber, handing the money to Callistus waiting in the shadows. Task scheduled. You will track down the senator's son, discreetly confirm or deny paternity, and roll up a rumor campaign to claim a goat. Excuse, noble birth. By morning, at 7 a.m., the orgy shifts into the debrief phase. Guests sip watered wine, dab at their temples, and inhale fresh air. Zone clearance orders go out. People scramble to remember what happened. Grotesque, hilarious, and dangerously incriminating. Then, Tiberius arrives again, a persistent fellow. He corners you by the colonnade, looking flushed and anxious. I need your help with something. Delicate. He slides you a silver coin stamped with his ring. Half a vote. You raise an eyebrow. When do you need discretion? 2 hours ago. You suppress a sigh. Politics by sunrise. This job never stops. Back in your office, another messenger arrives. This one is a pale senator's wife, veiled in tears. My husband. He mentioned a woman named Claudia. She whispers. I think it got serious. A divorce in the Senate world is more explosive than any public scandal. She wants you not just to erase the rumor, but to produce proof that Claudia was never there, the husband never met her. You lay out your protocol, obtain witness statements, cook, clean, guard, forge Claudia's alibi. She was visiting a sick friend in Ardea. Delete any full-body molds, fresco imprints, or lingering perfume. Her eyes fill. She drops another pouch of gems at your feet. Consider it done, you whisper, offering an assuring smile. Meanwhile, a low-level tribune slides in, fearful, sweating. My speech on grain subsidies, delivered here last night. It's too honest. He fumbled. He spoke of corruption, inflation, and privilege. Someone might bring charges, disloyal rhetoric. He pleads for your help. Rewrite the public record, erase the speech in tomorrow's scrolls, create a counter-narrative that he was praising Caesar personally. He offers land. A villa. A patronage promise. You're used to this. A discreet note written on a crumb of parchment, edges darkened. You take it. The game continues. You're swirling between clients. The vault of secrets deepens. You pause only when your assistant, Callistus, taps your shoulder. He hands you a slender scroll sealed with the vestal insignia. You break the seal. Inside, instructions to hide a clandestine meeting between 2 high priests. They've consorted with foreign envoys under the guise of theology. If exposed, religion, and several thrones, could topple, you let the gravity sink in. This is no longer a simple orgy side business. You're now a broker of state-level discretion, yet still, the orgy above doesn't pause, jokes ripple, candles burnin' low, laughter throbs in the marble halls, and you are already 3 tasks into your other job, whispered feature. In an hour, you'll have the senator's son, the senator's wife's rival, the tribune's rewritten speech, and a compromise pact with the Vestals. You glance at the still flickering lamp. The walls seem to lean in. The frescoes watch with cracked smiles. Another message arrives. A goat-drawn cart rolls up with 30 leather-bound scrolls. One message inside: my bribe survived the wine. Let's talk about your next silence. You smile. You say you're just a party planner, but that's only half the truth. At dawn, while others nurse hangovers or whisper about whose toga ended up where, you're already at work again, this time, without the garlands or music. This job doesn't involve figs or dancers or even candlelight. It involves secrets, and the price of keeping them. You are, by necessity and reputation, the unofficial broker of Roman discretion. It starts subtly. A missing brooch. A love letter dropped in the wrong bedroom. An offhand joke made too loudly about someone else's spouse. And suddenly, you're not just organizing events, you're managing fallout. Quietly. Efficiently. For a price. At first, it was coins. Then pearls. Now. Property. Horses. Exotic spices. And once, an entire bathhouse, because people talk. Especially after too much Falernian wine and not enough self-control, you've developed a system. Each morning, a queue of clients forms discreetly in the atrium. They don't knock. They don't announce their names. They arrive, disguised, through the side door. Senators, tribunes, even poets. And occasionally, someone in a cloak with a dagger tucked too obviously into their belt. You record everything in a wax tablet, coded so thoroughly even you have to squint to decipher it later. Green circle means gossip to suppress. Red triangle means someone saw something they shouldn't. A black X. That's a bribe you're tempted to take but probably shouldn't. Callistus handles intake. You handle outcomes. You pace your office, which now functions as both a war room and confessional. The walls are lined with maps, lists of names, and curtained niches where secret meetings occur. Enoch. The first client of the day. A young noblewoman, face veiled, voice trembling. She claims someone photographed her, well, painted her, in a compromising scene beside the fountain. The artist is bragging. The painting, she fears, will be displayed publicly. You offer a solution: find the artist, buy the painting, burn it. Or better, replace it with one that makes her look like a devoted worshipper of Minerva. She nods, grateful, and drops an emerald ring onto the table. You pick it up, hold it to the light, and begin crafting a cover story. Before midday, you've resolved 5 cases, then given a job under a different name. Discretion is your currency. And you trade it well. By afternoon, the pace slows. You allow yourself a moment to breathe, until a courier arrives with a scroll sealed in obsidian wax. No name. No crest. Only one word inside: help. You stare at it. Someone important is in trouble. Someone who knows you never say no. You pull out a fresh tablet. Another night begins. When the emperor attends, there are many types of evenings in Rome, some wild, some dull, some just one long whispered scandal over honeyed wine. But nothing compares to the chaos that descends when the emperor decides to attend. It begins with a rumor, always. A servant's cousin's neighbor swears they saw the imperial litter being polished. A friend of a friend heard a palace cook mention a food allergy in the third person. By midday, the whispers congeal into certainty: the emperor is coming, and your stomach drops like a gladiator in a snake pit. You cancel your bath. You rework the seating chart. You send Callistus running to triple the wine order and clear every grape from the menu because last time. His radiance nearly choked on a seed and declared a week of mourning for all fruit-based snacks. At sunset, the imperial retinue arrives like a thundercloud with sandals. They don't knock. They don't announce. They appear, like a divine plague of perfectly perfumed judgment. You barely have time to bow before they sweep in. Musicians switch to flute arrangements. Slaves dive for missing cushions. Somewhere, someone drops a tray, and possibly a marriage. Then comes the emperor himself, resplendent in deep purple, the shade legally reserved for imperial robes. He glides in as though the floor itself lowers to welcome him. You are momentarily blinded by the gold embroidery, and then even more so by the realization that he's in a good mood. This, paradoxically, terrifies you more than if he'd entered screaming. He smiles. That smile could mean pleasure, or the first note of your execution order. I heard your orgies are educational, he says casually, sipping wine poured by 6 synchronized servants. You nod carefully. We offer a full cultural immersion. Excellent, he says, clapping you on the shoulder with imperial familiarity that somehow hurts. I've brought some surprises. He gestures behind him. A line of people step forward. You see, let the evening begin, the emperor declares, and thus, the orgy transforms. The poet, named Felix the Flowing, insists on reading an ode before dinner. It's titled On the Divine Curvature of Imperial Ankles. You nod encouragingly as the words spiral into increasingly unsettling metaphors involving olives, loyalty, and the moon's reflection in bathwater. You watch the emperor. He nods slowly. No emotion. You wonder if he's enjoying it or calculating whether Felix is worth feeding to the peacocks. Meanwhile, the philosopher has found a table to climb. The body is but a vessel, he proclaims. Let us abandon the skin and feast upon truth. You motion Callistus to gently help him down. It takes 3 people and a jug of honeyed milk. The Egyptian priest has unrolled a map of the afterlife and is attempting to convert the household staff. One slave converts immediately, mostly to avoid clearing vomit, and the peacocks have escaped. One pecks a senator's wig. Another poops on a sacred tapestry. The third perches dramatically on the emperor's shoulder, who doesn't seem to notice or care. You whisper an apology. He waves it off. My mother once had a peacock. It stabbed my father. But it was beautiful. You smile thinly. The feast begins. Food arrives in waves. Dishes shaped like mythical creatures. Wines from provinces that no longer exist. A goose roasted inside a pig stuffed inside a watermelon. It collapses midway through serving and sprays hot lentils across 2 tribunes and a visiting dignitary from Numidia. The emperor laughs. A terrifying sound. Splendid, he declares. Let us have music. What follows is not music. It is a battle. One faction of musicians believes they are to play a love ballad. Another interprets the emperor's tone as a call for war drums. A third simply starts tuning a harp aggressively. It takes 7 minutes, 4 threats, and 1 near duel to resolve. The emperor claps again. I grow bored. Someone juggle. A senator volunteers. You beg him not to. He insists. He tries. He fails. A goblet shatters. Someone's lap gets soaked. Someone else's pride gets permanently stained. The emperor shrugs. Well tried. You exhale, then, out of nowhere, who here dares to perform a truth game with me? The emperor says. You freeze. No one dares say no. A circle forms. He points at you. You first. Tell me a secret no one else knows. You pause. Think fast. Once, I replaced your cousin's imported perfume with vinegar to stop her from seducing every guard in the palace. He blinks, then bursts out laughing. She did smell like a salad. You're still alive, the circle continues. Confessions flow like wine. A tribune admits to forging signatures. A noblewoman claims she once bribed a vestal. Someone cries. Someone else throws up from anxiety. You pass out fig cakes and fan the flames of distraction. The emperor claps again, a toast to honesty. You raise your cup, hoping that's the last surprise. It isn't. Halfway through the night, the emperor leans close. I think someone wants to kill me. You nod slowly, then realize he's serious. You freeze. Tonight? He shrugs. Possibly. I brought decoys. You glance around. Every servant could be an assassin. Every guest is a conspirator. You excuse yourself, find Callistus, emergency protocol. Switch wine cups. Move all knives. Search the garden for crossbows. Callistus doesn't ask. He's already moving. You create a diversion, declare an impromptu poetry contest. It works. Everyone is too self-absorbed to plan murder while rhyming. Later, you find a poisoned goblet behind a curtain. You quietly replace it with a clean one. You pocket the tainted cup. You scan the room again. The emperor is asleep. A peacock guards his chair like a divine sentinel. You collapse. Internally, the threat, maybe, has passed. At dawn, the emperor rises. He stretches. Delightful evening. I may come again. You force a smile. We would be honored. He steps into his litter. The entourage follows. The peacock squawks one final goodbye, and then, peace. You sit. You sip leftover wine. Your hand trembles. The orgy is over, but your career just barely survived. You sit there, limp as a wine-soaked fig, contemplating retirement, exile, or inventing a new identity as a potter in Crete. None seem unreasonable. You have survived the emperor, the peacocks, the poetry, and, if your luck holds, a possible assassination attempt. But your nerves. They've signed a surrender treaty and crawled off into early oblivion. Callistus appears beside you, expression grave. Good news, he says. Your laugh is hollow. You found the poisoner. Better, he says. The emperor left his sandal. You blink. Why is that good? He holds up the golden slipper, encrusted with imperial insignia and inexplicable glitter. Because now we have an excuse to not invite him next time. We're returning it. With ceremony. At his palace. We are not hosting again. You nod, dazed. We send it. With trumpets. And ideally, Callistus adds, a small parade and an unrelated natural disaster. You stand, wobbling slightly. The banquet hall is a battlefield. Smashed goblets. Broken sandals. One of the senators is asleep inside a decorative urn. A musician sobs quietly into a lyre. Somewhere, a peacock still patrols like a feathery enforcer. You begin the cleanup by retrieving your dignity from beneath the couch cushions. It's wrinkled. It smells like mulled wine and regret. You wear it anyway. Hours pass. Staff sweep. Furniture is right. Someone finds Felix the Flowing trapped under a cheese sculpture of Hercules. You consider leaving him there, but the sculpture's melting. Callistus returns. Herr Askew. We've accounted for all guests. Even the priest. He's converted half the kitchen and opened a temple in the pantry. You sigh, and the poison. We've locked it in a safe, Callistus says, surrounded by garlic, iron nails, and a small but committed cat. You raise a brow. Superstition, he mutters. I'm taking no chances. At midday, silence descends for the first time in hours. It's so complete, so rare, you suspect it might be a trap. You breathe it in like incense. Your bones hum with exhaustion, and then, a knock, not the imperial triple clink. No sandals scraping marble. Just a plain, wooden knuckle knock. Somehow, worse, you hesitate. Callistus cracks the door. A courier stands there, sweating. He holds a scroll, not imperial, worse, it's from your mother. You snatch the scroll and unroll it with trembling hands. The handwriting is unmistakable, precise, looping, and unforgiving. My darling child, I heard the emperor attended your little event. How charming, your Aunt Lucretia has heard things. Apparently there was a peacock incident. You really must learn to restrain your poultry. Also, your cousin Gaius is very upset you didn't invite him. He says his toga was pressed and everything. You will make it up to him. Perhaps a garden luncheon. Something tasteful. Kisses, mother. You close the scroll slowly, imagining fire consuming it. Callistus peers over your shoulder. She knows. She always knows. You groan. I'll schedule a luncheon. No poultry, you say. No poetry. No priest. And absolutely no emperor. You both nod, shaking on it like men sealing a blood pact. Then immediately start drafting backup evacuation plans, just in case. Days pass, the emperor doesn't return, no assassins, no imperial spies, no exotic animals disguised as messengers. It's unsettling. You spend sleepless nights wondering if that's good or bad. Then, one quiet morning, a letter arrives. You tear it open with trembling fingers. To the esteemed host of that evening, I commend your bravery, resourcefulness, and emotional elasticity. I found the peacocks inspiring. My mood remains intact, my drink unpoisoned, and my interest piqued. Should I ever require a midnight symposium on metaphysical scandal, I shall think of you. P.S. The philosopher has requested a stipend. He claims the milk jug opened his third eye. P.P.S. My guards found 3 figs under my throne. Tell your staff, well done. Imperially, the emperor, you fold the letter and stare at the wall. He liked it. Callistus stares at you. He really is mad. You nod, but, you say slowly, this means, we survived. Barely. And if we ever need to bribe someone, we can say we hosted a night so memorable even the emperor wrote back. Callistus considers this a valuable currency. You both sit in silence, until someone screams. You rush to the atrium. The pantry temple has grown, now there are candles. And chanting, and a goat. You close the door. That's tomorrow's problem. Weeks later, people still whisper about that evening. The poet tours nearby provinces, rebranding the night as Rome's divine cultural rapture. The peacock on the emperor's shoulder appears in 3 different mosaics. A new phrase enters the lexicon, to be orgied, meaning to endure complete chaos with a polite smile. You are now known as the host. Invitations pour in for other events, weddings, tribunals, even a trial. You decline most of them, but one catches your eye. It's handwritten, from the Vestal High Priestess. We hear your events are spiritually evocative. Might we inquire about planning a Saturnalia gathering? You sigh. Callistus appears, holding a new scroll. The Egyptian priest is back. He wants to bless the floor tiles. You nod vaguely. He says he'll bring the goat. You down an entire goblet of wine, then reach for a second. I need a vacation. To Crete? To anywhere with no emperors. No peacocks. No poetry. Callistus ponders. Sicily has olives. And wine. You stand. We leave at dawn. What about the kitchen cult? They can have the house. He blinks. All. All of it. You point to the pantry, where the goat is now wearing a tiara. All. Of. It. And so you escape. For now, you find a villa on a hillside where no one knows your name. You host small dinners, polite ones, with 1 guest. Maybe 2, you screen for poets at the door. You check for peacocks in advance, and when the wind carries news of imperial banquets, you smile, because you know what it takes, you know how close the line is between entertainment and execution, and you know, if he ever shows up again, you'll be ready. This time, you'll hide the grapes. You dream about silence, not just the kind where no one is screaming for more pomegranate wine, but the kind where even the crickets whisper. You picture yourself barefoot in a vineyard far from Rome, the only soundtrack a lazy breeze and the satisfied hum of well-fed goats. No senators. No assassins. No emergency toga repairs, just you, Augustus the donkey, your loyal imaginary companion, and rows of grapes growing in straight, non-political lines. You try to describe this dream to Callistus one morning over stale bread and diluted wine. He nods with the same blank expression he gives when you explain where to hide poison goblets. "A farm," he says. "With chickens. And olives. Maybe dates. Maybe I'll grow cucumbers just to watch them grow," Callistus frowns. "But what about the Vestal Temple bribe fund? And the secret meeting cave? And the nightly silk inventories, all of it," you say, eyes gleaming with madness, "can be composted. You get exactly 2 hours to savor this fantasy before someone knocks, a senator's son. Drunk. Shirtless. Weeping. There's been an incident. Of course there is. The retirement dream doesn't die, but it gets bruised. Daily, every time you have to reassign a dancer because she's learned too much Latin. Every time someone tries to blackmail you with your own handwriting. Every time you discover a drunken guest has rewritten the seating chart to place his ex-wife next to his current mistress. You close your eyes and picture the vineyard. No one there ruins a party with an impromptu flute recital. No one needs you to hide a sheep in a wine cellar. No one forgets their own name and sobs on a peacock. But here, back in Rome, your days remain chaotic. And so do your nights. Some days, the job is quiet enough for a mid-morning olive. Other days, you're invited to an intimate dinner that turns into a 12-person sword fight because someone said Pliny the Elder was overrated. You take notes, of course. For the memoir. Not that you'll ever write it. Chapter 1, How to Remove Honey Stains from Marble. Chapter 2, Why Senators Should Not Be Allowed Lutes. Chapter 3, If you find a goat in the fountain, pretend it's a gift, but dreams of retiring, of hanging up your scrolls and wax tablets, of handing over the keys to the cellar full of regrets, they become stronger with every surprise visit from the imperial cousins. You start counting your savings, you start pricing vineyards, you start wondering if Callistus can be trusted not to follow you. You even start writing a fake death notice for yourself. Then, of course, someone throws another orgy. They always do. It's just a small gathering, they say, only 70 guests, they say, we won't need masks this time. You arrive to find 10 musicians, 20 acrobats, a live panther, tied with an increasingly loose silk ribbon, and 3 poets who refuse to leave until someone claps. You take a deep breath, you imagine cucumbers, you start keeping a secret map. It shows your escape route. It shows possible farm locations. It even lists which border guards you've bribed in case you need to disappear entirely. Callistus finds it. He asks, "Should I start packing?" You hesitate. You picture Augustus the donkey again. You whisper, "Soon." Retirement is always soon. Until then, there's always another scroll, another scandal, another mysterious cake shaped like the Colosseum with an actor inside. You'll keep planning, you'll keep dreaming, and maybe, just maybe, the next orgy will be boring enough to let you slip away. You pray for boredom. It never comes. But tonight, something shifts. After a particularly uneventful poetry duel and a rare moment where no furniture is being used for anything indecent, you wander out to the atrium. The moon is low. The air is still. You sit by the fountain, stare at your reflection, and almost fall asleep. Then you hear footsteps. Callistus. He sits beside you. Silent. For once, after a while, he says, "There's a farm in Brundisium. I know the owner." You turn to look at him. "Goats?" you ask. 14, he says. And a fig orchard, you laugh. A real one, then the laughter turns into a sigh, because you both know, you'll still be here next week. And the week after. Until Rome burns or you do, still, the dream lingers. The fantasy of a clean morning. Of a donkey that doesn't need bribes. Of olives that don't have scandal carved into every pit. You place a single note on your desk, when ready, Brundisium, someday, but not yet, because the next morning, you wake to a tray of emergency olives and the smell of urgency. Someone's pounding on the door, not in the polite may I enter your scandalous estate way, but in the fire, flood, or foreign invasion rhythm. You open it in your night tunic, bleary-eyed, it's a palace courier. You can tell by the unnecessarily shiny belt and that subtle aura of fierce sweat, the emperor, he says, panting, has decided to hold a symposium. You blink. Symposium? Like, people talk. Yes. With wine. So a drunk argument. The courier nods solemnly, you suppress a groan. You were so close to a cucumber this morning. You had even selected a patch of dream soil in your mind, moist and scandal-free. You summon Callistus, he wants a symposium, you mutter. Callistus squints. Not an orgy. Not yet. Then it's a trap. You nod grimly. Get the wine. Hide the peacocks. The symposium takes place in a marble hall too large for sense and too echoey for reason. Philosophers are seated on reclined couches, looking like vaguely intellectual sea creatures. Each clutches a cup of wine and a topic they refuse to let go of. You spot trouble before the introductions are finished. One stoic is already weeping into his beard. A cynic is chewing on the hem of his own toga. The emperor watches it all with the calm of a man who either enjoys intellectual suffering or has dosed himself with pre-symposium opium. You are not allowed to leave, of course not, the emperor notices you. He smiles, as if to say, let's see how you handle this chaos without music, nudity, or flaming ducks. And oh, do they talk about virtue. They talk about fate. They talk about the ethics of ornamental fish. There's a full hour dedicated to whether the gods invented soup or merely tolerated it. You pass around figs just to stop someone from fainting, then the emperor speaks. I have a question, he says. The room holds its breath. What is the truth, when told with bad breath? Silence, then, murmurs. Scrolls rustle. One philosopher clutches his own leg like he's about to birth an answer. You excuse yourself quietly. Callistus follows. I think, you say, ducking behind a column, this might be worse than an orgy. Callistus nods. Less predictable. No safe word. You look at him, dread blooming. There will be a part 2, won't there? He doesn't answer. The next morning, someone gifts you a turtle. It has the emperor's name scratched into its shell. This is either an honor or a curse. You put it in a basin and whisper, blink twice if this is a warning. It blinks once, you're still not sure. You begin to wonder if the vineyard is calling not just as escape, but as salvation. If you don't leave soon, you'll end up giving philosophical lectures to poultry or marrying the turtle out of political obligation. You dig out the Brundisium note, when ready. You draw a little olive branch beside it. You begin to test the waters. You let Callistus handle a minor event. A tribute dinner for a Bactrian ambassador. Only 12 guests. No fire eaters. No poets. Just clean seating, straightforward soup, and a table centerpiece that doesn't weep blood or open into interpretive dance. It's boring. You feel your soul stretch like a cat. Then a senator sets fire to the dessert on purpose to make a point about rebirth. You stare at the flames, so close, still not yet. You start practicing for farm life. You rise early. You try planting something in the courtyard, a modest tomato vine. It dies within days. You try again. This time, rosemary. A slave accidentally uses it as garnish for a dish meant to insult someone's dead uncle. Social disaster. Minor duel, the rosemary dies in vain, you look at the courtyard. Then at your hands, too much Rome, you whisper, even the plants know, another scroll arrives, it's not an invitation. It's a petition, from several mid-tier nobles. They want you to train them. In hosting. In discretion. In scandal recovery, they call it the discipline of controlled chaos. You reread the scroll 5 times. You set it down. You weep gently into your breakfast wine, Callistus finds you there, so, he says carefully, a school. You nod. The vineyard can wait. He looks at the turtle. The turtle blinks again, the first class is held discreetly in your west atrium, 7 nobles arrive. One brings a goat. You ignore it, you feel something. Not joy. But not despair either, maybe hope, or indigestion, hard to tell with the wine, and then one night, after dismissing your students, one of whom has renamed himself Jupiter and insists on toga embroidery shaped like lightning. You find yourself alone in the atrium again, the moon is full, Callistus appears, holding a scroll, he doesn't speak, he just hands it to you, you open it, it's from Brundisium, the fig trees are heavy this year. The goats are lazy. Augustus misses you. The vineyard waits, you trace the words with a finger, you fold it. Slide it into your robe. Say nothing, Callistus pours you wine, to someday. He asks, you raise your cup, to someday. And for the first time in a long while, you sleep soundly, no assassins, no orgies, no emergency seating plans. Just the faintest dream of figs and silence, and now, as the stars begin to dim beneath the slow unfurling of dawn, you sit once more by the quiet fountain, the same one that has borne witness to secrets, to laughter, to the endless symphony of Rome's waking and falling dreams. The marble feels cooler now beneath your fingertips, and the air has grown still, save for the soft rustle of leaves beyond the columns and the distant breath of the sea. The revelry is long faded. Even the candles seem tired, you listen, not for orders, not for footsteps, not for scandal, but for silence. And in that silence, you find it again, the whisper of your vineyard dream. The one with the dusty hills and the steady rhythm of hooves in soft earth. A place where olives ripen without politics, where names don't carry weight, and the only togas are hung out to dry in peace. Callistus is gone now, banished into the hush of early morning. Perhaps asleep, perhaps watching. But here, in this gentle quiet, you are no longer Rome's planner, no longer the keeper of scrolls and secrets. Just a tired soul, breathing alongside marble statues, content to pause, you close your eyes, you imagine the sun rising slowly, not with fire, but with gold, over a grove where nothing needs fixing, and nothing needs hiding, you let the image linger, let your shoulders drop. Let your breath soften. Let the stories of the night dissolve, one by one. Like ink in warm water, there will be no orgies here. No messages to decode. Just one path ahead, curving gently through quiet fields, leading somewhere far from noise, far from duty, and if you listen carefully. The donkey waits, sleep now, you've earned the stillness, and for tonight, you can rest, have sweet dreams.